Chapter 1413. If he could go online now, Fan Xing really wanted to post a question about how he could survive a rapid fall of several thousand meters when he only had 2 fireball talismans on him. But unfortunately, it seemed that Fan Xing already didn't have the chance to regret it. So that night, news of the meteorite crashing into Xianxing apartments and destroying the entire building, and how the building owner had ejected on the spot and fled with his employees spread all over the internet. This miraculous operation of just launching a meteorite without caring about landing instantly sparked a new wave of public opinion. As the saying went, when Brother Black smiled, it was hard to tell whether he would live or die. Created by Brother Chong, he flew into the sky and blew himself up. The apartment building's designer, Shou Chong, became famous in the end. Fan Xing was the only one who survived the accident. He had used the last 2 fireball talismans he had on him to attack the ground the moment he hit the ground, creating a reverse propulsion force to cushion his fall. This saved Fan Xing's life. Although he hadn't died, in the eyes of outsiders, he would have been better off dead than alive. Why is it him again? When the ambulance from Songhai First Military Medical Hospital arrived at the scene, the emergency doctor couldn't help looking stupefied when he saw the dying young man lying on the ground in front of him. He had a deep impression of Fan Xing. After all, not all men had the experience of having their balls pierced by ribs. When Fan Xing had been discharged from the hospital 2 days ago, the emergency doctor had paid special attention to him. He felt that it was a miracle in medical history. Furthermore, it was unlikely that this kind of miracle would happen a second time. But now, the emergency doctor decided to take back his words. Using a portable scanning magic treasure, the emergency doctor started to give Fan Xing a preliminary appraisal and treatment. The situation wasn't optimistic at all. The last time he had been treated, it had only been a comminuted fracture of the skull. But now, apart from his head, it was a slime fracture all over his body. The so-called slime fracture was even more exaggerated than a comminuted fracture. The bones in his body were almost crushed into powder. His whole body was like a pool of slime. A slime fracture all over his body. This kind of case is rare, an accompanying medical staff said with a sigh. To be honest, with this kind of injury, it might be better to be directly smashed into ashes. That might be better. If the strength is great enough to smash a person into ashes, the person who is smashed into ashes won't feel any pain. Thus, Fan Xing's current condition was actually only slightly better than being smashed into ashes. He might as well die. Even if he could be saved, he was destined to be tortured. In fact, it wasn't just the bones problem. After the emergency doctor examined him, he found that Fan Xing's organs were also severely damaged. His organs are all ruptured, and his body is bleeding profusely. The egg and blood have fused together. Under normal circumstances, such severe injuries could basically be declared dead. But what the emergency doctor couldn't believe was that Fan Xing was still breathing. Everything was the same as last time. His injuries were obviously very serious. But Fan Xing was still hanging on to his last breath. His vitality is too tenacious. The emergency doctor sighed. Although Fan Xing's injuries were severe, his heart rate was actually stable. What the hell? He snorted under his breath. Even a health lock cheat wasn't that ridiculous. Of course, Fan Xing did not have the ability to lock his HP. This was just a continuation of the curse that Death Heavenly Law had left on Fan Xing. As long as Fan Xing harbored malicious thoughts towards her, the curse of Final Destination would always be there. Moreover, Fan Xinghui blamed all his resentment on Lotus Sunday. Thus, the curse of the heavenly Tao of death became a kind of perpetual motion. So in fact, even if Lotus Sun hadn't sent out the doppelganger Mysterious Sea, Fan Xing would still meet a tragic end in the end. How is it? Should we bring him back? I don't think he can be cured even if we bring him back. This brother was also in our hospital before, and he directly charged 200 million yuan into our account. So don't worry about the medical expenses. The emergency doctor said. Moreover, we're doctors, and since we're doctors, saving lives is our duty. No matter how difficult it is to save this person. So let's take him away. He called out to the medical staff beside him. This was the second time he had saved Fan Xing. Faced with this man's tenacious vitality, all the accompanying doctors were moved. Elsewhere, in the secret realm of the immortal star, the girl had smoothly replaced the fourth heavenly Tao magic cube, and at the same time, fused the old one into Mysterious Sea. At this point, Mysterious Sea had become a spirit sword with 4 cores. The immortal star was a beautiful place with a pleasant temperature, and rainbow-colored clouds on the horizon were as dazzling as the aurora borealis. This was the legendary peach blossom land of the universe's secret realm, a very suitable place for vacation. Sun Yinger was holding a snow-white creature that looked like cotton. This was an immortal star, a creature whose entire body was as soft as cotton. It was said that each immortal star creature could live for more than 10,000 years. It was as if they could live forever here and never grow old. What a magical place. Lotus Sun sighed with emotion. If it wasn't for the mission to collect magic cubes, she might never have known that such a beautiful vacation spot existed in the universe. The immortal star was originally a place suitable for human habitation. But Tao ancestor Wang also modified it for his vacation, said Loopy Toad. The immortal star creatures were very amiable. They had lived here for generations and stood aloof from worldly affairs. No one had ever seen an immortal star angry before. Because of this, the immortal star was also known as the Honest Star. It was Tao ancestor Wang who had given it this nickname, and Loopy Toad thought that there might be a reason for it. After all, there were times when an honest person was enraged, and that was a very scary thing. Who knows, it might even cause a calamity. Fortunately, the immortal star creatures were generally cooperative with the matter of replacing the heavenly Tao magic cube. They couldn't speak, and all of them used their mental power to convey information. Along the way, they led Lotus Sun and the others to successfully complete the mission of replacing the magic cube. With 4 cores, Mysterious Sea was even more powerful. This formidable power was now in the hands of a girl at the Foundation establishment stage. No one could have imagined it. Rong, you're going to be invincible. Sun Yinger chuckled. But the girl's expression didn't look as relaxed as she imagined. I feel like everything is going too smoothly. She was worried that there would be more changes in the future. Although nothing had gone wrong with the task of replacing the magic cube so far, that faint sense of worry lingered in the girl's heart the whole time. I think you're thinking too much, Rong. Even if something happens, even if the sky falls, Ling Zhenren will be there to hold it up. Sun Yinger comforted her. Tomorrow is the Sword Tao Conference. I think it's better if you think about how to perform at the Sword Tao Conference. I'll practice swordsmanship with you tonight. I'll teach you a new sword technique. I guarantee you'll win. A new sword technique? I was inspired by the dog-beating stick technique in wuxia novels. It's called Whirlwind Dog Chopping Sword. Loopy Toad? ? Chapter 1414. Sun Yinger hadn't come up with this whirlwind dog chopping sword technique. It was a technique she had invented and developed herself. Its advantage was that it had an extremely fast attack speed. As the saying went, speed was the only thing unbeatable in all the martial arts in the world. Once the whirlwind dog chopping sword technique was used, the speed of the sword would continuously increase over time. If she could cultivate this technique to perfection, she could stab out 80 times in a second. It was also very effective against women, because this technique specialized in attacking the lower half of the body. Because at the beginning, Sun Yinger had developed this sword technique to deal with Wang Ying. But later, Sun Yinger discovered that not only would her Shadow Dao abilities be greatly reduced in front of Wang Ying, but she would also be forced into a disarmed state. This damn gorilla. But since she had developed this sword technique, Sun Yinger felt that it would be a pity to waste it. What do you think, Rong? Do you want to learn it or not? If you want, I can teach you. Sun Yinger was very much looking forward to Lotus Sun learning it, and using it in front of everyone. But you haven't told me what the weakness is. Lotus Sun was a little hesitant. She had no doubt about the lethality and destructive power of this sword technique, but the name really didn't sound beautiful at all. It was too crazy. It didn't fit her style as a quiet and beautiful girl. The weakness isn't big, but it's not small either, Sun Yinger said. Once you start using this sword technique, you can't stop. You can't stop until you chop the opponent up. Otherwise, you'll go berserk. Chop. The whirlwind dog chopping sword technique is like a soybean milk machine. It first attacks the lower half of the body and turns it into egg paste, and then because of the high attack speed, it rubs against the air and eventually turns it into egg tarts. Lotus Sun? Question mark. So that night when she got home, Sun Yinger was taken away by Wang Ying. Who knew if Wang Ying had been chopped into egg tarts? Sun Yinger probably couldn't keep her waist the next day. Wednesday, December 9th. Wang Ying still hadn't let Sun Yinger come back in the morning. Lotus Sun lit incense for her on the balcony, then went back to the desk to pick up the list of transfer students that Headmaster Chen had given her, intending to take a good look at it on the way home. Jiang Yingying's name had been at the top of the list, which had made her a little upset. As a result, she hadn't fully understood the other transfer students' information. When she went out, Jiang Xiaoche was already waiting for her at the entrance in his low-key black business car. "Good morning, Brother Xiaoche." Lotus Sun greeted him, opened the car door, and leaned against the back seat. Her gaze swept to the rearview mirror in front of her. She saw Jiang Xiaoche's listless face and a pair of deep dark circles under his eyes. "Why do I feel like you didn't sleep well? Are you working overtime again?" Lotus Sun asked. As far as she could remember, Jiang Xiaoche rarely seemed so dispirited and listless. As Jiang Xiaoche drove, he didn't know whether he should say these things to Lotus Sun or not. But right now, he was so depressed that he couldn't help but pour out all the bitterness in his belly. "I seem to have fallen in love with a girl, but Brother Xiaoche's condition, most girls wouldn't refuse it, right? Unless the girl Brother Che likes isn't an ordinary person." Lotus Sun analyzed. "Or else? Or what?" Jiang Xiaoche was puzzled. Lotus Sun looked at Jiang Xiaoche seriously. "Brother Xiaoche, don't tell me you like someone under the age of 14. Recently, she had seen a lawyer with the surname Bao sexually assaulting his adopted daughter, and had even said that he was actually dating his adopted daughter. Such a thick-skinned person disgusted Lotus Sun to the core. That was why there were so many thoughts floating around in his mind. "I'm not that beastly." The corners of Jiang Xiaoche's mouth twitched. "But that girl is indeed a high school girl. I've been thinking about it for the past 2 days, and I've realized that I really like her. I can wait. Do you have that girl's contact information?" "Yeah. I even have WeChat. Last night, I scrapped hundreds of accounts. I didn't add any of them." The corners of Lotus Sun's mouth twitched. After all, he was dating a high school girl. If Jiang Xiaoche still used societal methods, it would be strange if he didn't get rejected. "I think your brother Xiaoche shouldn't harass other people for the time being. What if that girl goes to the police and they find out that it's you and Grandpa finds out?" Lotus Sun kindly reminded him. "Mrs. Wright, I'll be careful." Jiang Xiaoche gripped the steering wheel, pulled himself together, and nodded. Lotus Sun sighed silently. After all, Jiang Xiaoche had watched her grow up, so she wasn't worried that he would have any particularly bad intentions. It was just that sometimes he was a little silly. In Lotus Sun's memory, Old Man Sun seemed to have categorized Jiang Xiaoche as having intermittent silly syndrome. In other words, Jiang Xiaoche was usually pretty smart. But once he encountered something that made him feel conflicted, he would do something stupid. Halfway down the road, Jiang Xiaoche noticed that Lotus Sun was looking very seriously at a register, and couldn't help feeling a little curious. "Miss, what are you looking at?" "The register of new students. Headmaster Chen gave me the task of showing them around the campus," Lotus Sun answered, her eyes fixed on the register. She had already memorized most of the information about the new transfer students. What surprised her was that there was actually a foreign transfer student on the list this time. This was a girl from Sun Island named Ryoko Kamiya. According to the information, Kamiya's Mandarin was very poor and she was still learning. Number 60 high was finally in line with international standards. Lotus Sun smiled bitterly in her heart. When the car was about to reach number 60 high's main entrance, there was finally only one page left in the girl's register. She turned the page and was surprised to find that the information on the last page wasn't about the students. It's information on the new teacher. Lotus Sun's pupils contracted slightly. Logically speaking, the student council shouldn't be in charge of the new teacher's information. That was the Human Resources Department's business. Thus, The girl deduced that there was a high chance that Headmaster Chen had made a mistake when he was organizing the information. Filled with curiosity, Lotus Sun began to carefully read the information. He then realized that there were a total of 5 new teachers. Moreover, one of them was the newly appointed vice principal and a math teacher. However, the vice principal's name was a little strange. His name was Fire Ding. Wait a minute. Fire. D. Wasn't that just the word lamp? The girl suddenly thought of a familiar person. Could it be Senior Golden Lamp was the new vice principal and math teacher? Had Battle Sect finally infiltrated number 60 high school completely? Chapter 14-15. This week was number 60 high school's transfer period, so the school was particularly lively. Until next Monday, there might be new students joining number 60 high school every day. When Wang Ling arrived at the school, several people who had already arrived were discussing this matter. As Wang Ling had expected, that foreigner was the center of attention among the transfer students this time. Several of the boys in the class were having a heated discussion. They were all imagining what kind of person the foreign girl was. Who would have thought that our school would be promoted to a key city high school in just half a semester? Now she's even famous abroad, and even foreigners are interested. I heard there's a foreign girl called Ryoko Kumiya. I wonder which class she'll be in. Lotus Sun hadn't intentionally leaked the name list, but the name Ryoko Kumiya had already spread throughout the school, which Wang Ling found a little strange. Logically speaking, it was impossible for a teacher to leak information about a student in advance, and the name list was in the hands of Lotus Sun, who was the president of the student union. She hadn't told anyone else, so who had leaked the name? After comprehensive consideration, Wang Ling felt that there was only one possible answer to the question. Unless Ryoko Kumiya had leaked the information herself in advance. It looked like this girl wasn't easy to deal with. Wang Ling sighed in his heart. He didn't have a vague impression of Sun Island, because he had indeed fought with ninja cultivators from there before. It was a mystical place that was good at combining ninjutsu and cultivation. Of course, not everyone who came from there was an assassin. Sun Island also had kind-hearted locals. Students like Ryoko Kumiya, who had chosen to study abroad, came from well-off families, but most likely couldn't compare to Lotus Sun's family. Where did you get the news? Su Xiao asked as he collected his homework. Everyone was very curious about this student Ryoko Kumiya, who had come all the way from abroad. Everyone's spreading it on the school's tieba, Dopigua said. I heard that this student Ryoko Kumiya is very beautiful, a great beauty. Also, the Kumiya family is a well-known exorcism family in the area. Exorcism? Wang Ling was startled. In fact, the concept of exorcism wasn't a religion in the local area. Those so-called exorcism organizations essentially did exorcism. It was just that there were differences in how they called it. For example, the people of Sun Island preferred to call it exorcism. Wang Ling wasn't completely unfamiliar with the concept of spirit. After all, when he was very young, Loopy Toad had been a childhood trauma to him. Moreover, he had attended an exorcism convention last semester in search of Bai Qiao. To be honest, those spirits and ghosts were too weak, and weren't a challenge at all. Since young, Wang Ling had rarely been harassed by a spirit. Those who had harassed him had been transcended by the backlash. But even then, the exorcism industry still had great prospects for development. In essence, this line of work seemed to be able to be engaged in as long as a cultivator had a certain level of cultivation. If one did not have enough experience, even a cultivator with a high level of cultivation would very likely fall into the trap. Those specters and malicious ghosts were all very cunning. In Wang Ling's view, the demon race in the demon world was still a little more simple-minded. That was why there had always been a saying on the internet. Catching ghosts is harder than catching demons. Because of this, there had been a period of disdain between the demon exorcism faction and the demon hunter faction for a period of time, with each faction looking down on the other. If it wasn't for the fact that the demon world and the human world had reconciled and were planning to develop peacefully, the two factions would probably have fought again. The Jiogong family had chosen to send Jiogong Yoshiko to study in Huaxiu Nation this time. Wang Ling speculated that the Jiogong family's real goal might be to use Jiogong Yoshiko to open up their exorcism, an exorcism market in Huaxiao Nation. Of course, this was just Wang Ling's analysis. Everything was unknown until he met this Jiogong Yoshiko in the country. Wang Ling hoped that this girl wouldn't be in the same class as him. The first class in the morning was math, but Teacher Pan entered the classroom 10 minutes before class started. Students, starting today, our class will welcome a new math teacher. Teacher Hua is also our number 60 high school's new vice headmaster. Let's welcome him with a round of applause. After a burst of fierce applause, a handsome young man with lush hair in a suit stepped into the classroom. Wang Ling almost choked on his saliva when he saw this familiar face. Next to him, Jin Yuan and Gu Xuanji were also stupefied. What's going on? Jin Yuan asked Gu Xuanji telepathically. I think I heard earlier that Senior Golden Lamp wanted to come to number 60 high school, but I didn't expect him to come directly to be a leader. Gu Xuanji smiled bitterly. At that moment, Golden Lamp swept his gaze around and secretly communicated with Wang Ling out of the corner of his eye. It was as if he was saying to Wang Ling, Ling Jinren, pleasantly surprised or not, exciting or not. It made Wang Ling want to flip the table on the spot. Who knew why a monk who couldn't even figure out functions back then would run over to number 60 high school to be vice headmaster and a part-time math teacher? This didn't make sense. And what Wang Ling couldn't help wanting to ridicule even more was Monk Golden Lamp's lush hair. It was real hair. Through the king's eye, Wang Ling could clearly see that Monk Golden Lamp's hair grew out of the scars on the top of his head. This operation was really too magical, and Wang Ling was stunned on the spot. Hello students, this poor Taoist's name is Fire Ding, the monk said amiably. Wang Ling could tell that out of professional habit he had wanted to say this poor monk, but fortunately his brain had turned around in time, and he had directly failed due to his opening remarks. When he had applied for the job, Monk Golden Lamp had used his experience as a Taoist priest in one of his lives to successfully disguise his identity. As for documents and whatnot, they could all be handed over to the battle sect to handle. Furthermore, Ajwa was around to obtain a teacher's qualification certificate, so it wouldn't be a problem for him to obtain it in a matter of minutes. Today is the first time Teacher Fire Ding has taught a class. Teacher Fire Ding is a very powerful cultivator. I hope that if you have any questions, you can guard against arrogance and rashness and seize this opportunity. Focus on class and don't be distracted. After saying that, Teacher Pan glared at Wang Ling. Wang Ling, I'm talking about you. I knew in the corridor just now that you were distracted during morning self-study. Wang Ling? ? This scene was like the first day of school at number 60 high school. Old Pan left a few words of deterrence before he left. After everyone watched Old Pan leave in search of a private room, Monk Golden Lamp's face suddenly tensed up, because he saw that Super Chen's body seemed to be glowing. Super Chen, why do I feel like you're glowing from head to toe? Someone rubbed their eyes thinking they were seeing things. Is it because I'm here that the old version of the light blessing spell that I planted earlier resonated? The monk had never expected that something like this would happen in the end in his first class. Lotus Sun had also been blessed by his body not long ago, but he had used the new version of the light blessing spell at that time, and the glowing resonance bug had long since been fixed. At that moment, the monk had a bad feeling. Without saying anything else, he hurriedly walked over to Super Chen. The monk had no other choice now. The monk could only use the new version of the light blessing spell to replace the old one. Chapter 14-16. There was no doubt that as the new version of the blessing spell covered Super Chen's body, his blessed mouth had been strengthened once more in the future. Wang Ling felt that he had to be more wary of Super Chen. This guy's mouth was too scary, and it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that his words were law. He was simply a walking poisonous healer. But Super Chen had to say it unconsciously for it to be effective. He couldn't judge something with a utilitarian mindset, otherwise it would be inaccurate. Wang Ling felt that Super Chen's strengthening today might become a foreshadowing in the future. Now that number 60 high's big shots had gathered, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to call it the affiliated middle school of battle sect. In fact, there was something else that he hadn't expected. In fact, The heavenly Tao of death had already arrived by his side. He was a representative of heavenly Tao, one of the 6 main seats of the heavenly Tao governing committee, and had initially learned from Wang Ling. However, Death Heavenly Tao was very timid. Speaking of which, he felt a little ashamed. Out of fear of death, he didn't dare get too close to Wang Ling. This psychological shadow had been there ever since the last time Wang Ling had picked up Jinka and put a sword to his neck to interrogate him. He was a Death Heavenly Tao and didn't know shit about Heavenly Tao. How would he dare sit next to Ling Jinren and display his slight skill in front of an expert? Death Heavenly Tao shuddered at the thought of being in the same class as Wang Ling. But those guys from Heavenly Court had forced him to come to number 60 high, so he still had to continue with this task. Therefore, Death Heavenly Tao took a step back and came up with a solution. After Tyrant's morning class ended, he returned to the independent vice principal's office. He felt that he was doing quite well in math class. At first he didn't even know what a function was, but now it was a piece of cake. Although the learning time was longer. Of course, the most time-consuming part was overcoming fear. The mental pressure from Wang Ling's memory brick was so great that it took the monk 3 whole days to come back to his senses. In fact, to this day, there was still a faint shadow in his heart. But as the saying goes, if I don't go to hell, who will? In the end, Monk Jin Deng still perfectly displayed the spirit of a monk. In the end, he spent another 3 hours to finish all the math problems he had learned in college. He didn't dare say that he was very good at learning, but at the very least, he definitely wasn't as good as Wang Ling. A monk must be humble. There must be many areas where he is lacking. Learning mathematics in 3 hours was too long. He had to reflect on it. Back in the office, the monk put down the lesson plan in his hands and prepared to make a cup of tea. At this time, there was a knock on the office door, and a young man in overalls walked in. Hello, I'm here to apply for a position in the security department. I heard that you're still lacking a school guard captain. It turned out that number 60 high school guard was Old Lee, but he was getting on in years. Headmaster Chen decided that after they found a new school guard captain and handed over his duties, Old Lee would retire and enjoy his later years in peace. So now, there were people who came to apply for the position. The monk felt that this young man's aura was a little familiar. He turned around and saw that it was Death Heavenly Tao. It's you? It's me. Death Heavenly Tao's mouth twitched. At the same time, Tyrant fell into silence. The Heavenly Law Gate. This matter could be said to have become history again. This was simply unprecedented. Aren't you here to learn? The monk laughed. I wouldn't dare. Death Heavenly Tao sighed. I think this position is actually quite suitable for me. If anyone tries to touch me, I'll directly take them away. The monk was silent for a bit, then replied, but you should go to the HR department. I'm not in charge of this. There are a lot of people applying now. Can't you go through the back door? Death Heavenly Tao said. Considering that the Heavenly Tao also wanted face, after saying this, Death Heavenly Tao closed the office door. Then he suddenly knelt down with a thud and hugged the monk's thigh. Seeing your golden lamp. Save the child. Let go first, the monk sighed. Actually, I think Ling Jinren is very cute. He's not that scary. Besides, you made a great contribution in rescuing Miss Sun. So Ling Jinren definitely won't do anything to you. Death Heavenly Tao knelt on the ground and rested his hands on his thigh. But I still don't have the courage. Fine, you get up first. As for the school guard captain, this humble Taoist will think of a way. Golden Lamp helped Death Heavenly Tao up. Since Wang Ling's appearance, the entire Heavenly Tao had become humble. Although the Heavenly Tao began to become more slick, it seemed to have lost its original momentum. The monk didn't know whether this was a good thing or not. He felt that it was because the Heavenly Tao didn't have a good understanding of Wang Ling. Ling Jinren was so cute. When he ate crispy noodle snacks, his cheeks puffed up like a cute little hamster. What was there to be afraid of? It was lunchtime at number 60 high school. From the start of this semester, number 60 high school's lunchtime system had been abolished. The canteen no longer prepared lunchboxes in advance and delivered them to the classroom doors. All students had to walk to the canteen to eat, and there were no longer any special services for the elite students. Wang Ling heard that Headmaster Chen even planned to change the school uniform, so that all number 60 high school students would wear the elite school uniform. Everyone in number 60 high school was an elite. Although there was an elite class, it meant that the students were the best of the best. So even if they were students from the regular classes or remedial classes, as long as they were students of number 60 high school, they were also elites. Eliminating differential treatment was actually a sign of progress. Wang Ling felt that Headmaster Chen was a very far-sighted man. As a teacher, he should treat all students equally. For lunch today, Mother Wan had prepared sweet and sour pork, pepper and salt pork ribs, seaweed egg soup, steamed okra and stir-fried vegetables, all of which were nutritionally balanced. Apart from this, there was also a new dish that Mother Wan had invented called black fungus stewed with fatty big C. The students could choose to taste it. Wang Ling took the food and chose a corner seat to sit down. There were too many people in the canteen, and he actually didn't really want to eat in a crowded place. He planned to casually take a bite or two, and then leave straight away. Super Chen and Hirogwa also came over with their plates and sat down next to Wang Ling with ease. Being able to eat with familiar people finally soothed Wang Ling's mood a little. The corner seats were for 4 people, and after Hirogwa and Super Chen took their seats, there was only one seat left. "Why isn't Lotus Sun here?" Super Chen asked. He put his legs across the empty chair next to him, intending to reserve a seat for Lotus Sunday. "She doesn't come here to eat, as it's easy for a stampede to happen." Hirogwa said, "So student Lotus Sun's food is delivered directly to the office, just like the teachers." "Office? The student union office, that's where she eats," Hirogwa said. "Classmate Wang Ling, can I sit here?" At that moment, a sweet female voice rang out. Wang Ling, Super Chen and Hirogwa raised their heads, and were surprised to see a girl who actually looked a little like Lotus Sun. Furthermore, this girl wasn't wearing number 60 high school uniform, and had come in casual clothes. She wore a casual white off-the-shoulder short-sleeve top and a denim skirt, which stunned Super Chen and Hirogwa on the spot. Out of 10 points, this leg was definitely worth 9 points. "Please sit down." Super Chen quickly moved his leg away. Wang Ling. At that moment, this unfamiliar girl took the initiative to stretch out her hand to Wang Ling. "Hello, classmate Wang Ling. I'm a new transfer from Sword God Academy. I'm here to register today, and will officially report in tomorrow. I'm Jiang Yingying." Chapter 14-17. In his heart, Wang Ling despised Super Chen's ungrateful behavior. But very quickly Super Chen made up for it. Jiang Yingying stretched out her hand to shake his, but Super Chen grabbed it instead. "Jiang Yingying, right? Hello classmate Jiang, I'm Super Chen. I'm also classmate Wang Ling's best bro." Jiang Yingying was a little disgusted at first by this man who acted so familiar with her, but when she heard that Super Chen was Wang Ling's best bro, she suppressed the urge to shake his hand off. "So it's classmate Super Chen, I know you. You did very well in the 9 Dragons Mountain competition." Jiang Yingying smiled. Of course, this was just a courtesy. All her attention had been drawn to a speck of ashes in the era, and she actually didn't remember Super Chen's brilliant performance at all. But before coming to number 60 high school, Jiang Yingying had done as much homework as she could. It was just that Super Chen was Wang Ling's best bro. She had been negligent. She had to record it later. This would help Jiang Yingying find out more about Wang Ling's side in his heart. A beautiful transfer student suddenly taking the initiative to come over for a chat at lunchtime. Sure enough, she was too eye-catching. He wondered if he should bring his own bento to school in the future. No rice. Wang Ling could make his own bento. Braised crispy noodle soup, crispy noodle soup. He just needed to separate the bags, which was very convenient. Actually, Wang Ling himself was also very puzzled. He was already so low-key, and had even deliberately shaped his face to look like he thought he wasn't particularly handsome. But why could he still attract girls? Could it really be because of old Wang's strange DNA? And so he faced Jiang Yingying. Wang Ling really wanted to reply, "What on earth do you like about me? I'll change, alright?" But there were too many eyes in front of him, and he couldn't say it. Given that most of the people in the canteen were single dogs, Wang Ling's words were nothing more than adding fuel to the fire. If he really said it, in the eyes of many boys, This was nothing more than taking advantage of the situation. Our Wang Ling doesn't like to talk, he's just like that. What can I do for you, classmate Jiang? Super Chen was very friendly. Although it was his first time meeting Jiang Yingying, she gave him a very good first impression. Actually, it's nothing much. Jiang Yingying smiled, her eyes fixed on Wang Ling. I'm a fan of classmate Wang Ling. The essay you wrote during the Nine Dragons mountain range competition really opened my eyes. It would have been better if she hadn't said it. Once she did, Wang Ling instantly understood everything. F***ck. So this girl was Crispy Noodles' fault. Wang Ling lowered his head and pretended to eat, while his other hand stretched under the table to make calculations. Very quickly he understood the ins and outs of everything, as well as Jiang Yingying's real reason for transferring to number 60 high school. For Wang Ling, there was no such thing as asking for advice on composition. Love. It was even more impossible. Wang Ling felt that this Miss Jiang Yingying's intentions were misplaced. Moreover, at the very least, even if they were in love, that had to be done in accordance with the basic laws. Who would rush to get promoted right after transferring to another school? The food in number 60 High's canteen isn't bad. Today's sweet and sour pork was pretty good. Wang Ling, do you like meat too? Jiang Yingying had only sat down for a few seconds before she started looking for a topic of conversation. It was said that everyone knew what Sima Zhao was thinking. As long as one wasn't a fool, anyone could see Jiang Yingying's intentions. Super Chen's heart ached again. He didn't understand what on earth was so good about Wang Ling. Why were all the girls willing to surround him? Couldn't they consider him a bit? Jiang Yingying's question. Wang Ling continued to remain silent. He looked incomparably calm on the surface, but he was panicking inside. As good brothers, Super Chen and Hirogua could read the helplessness in Wang Ling's eyes. Classmate Jiang, I told you, Wang Ling is like this. Don't take offense. Are you from Divine Sword Academy? I actually wanted to ask you, how's your captain, Yi Jiang, doing now? Super Chen tried to change the subject. But Jiang Yingying only had eyes for Wang Ling. Wang Ling, can you still eat? I haven't touched the meat, I still have some here. As the saying went, don't talk while eating, don't talk while sleeping. A man who didn't talk while eating was so handsome. Jiang Yingying was full of joy. She wasn't angry at Wang Ling for not answering her question and remaining silent. On the contrary, she felt that Wang Ling was a single-minded boy. Wang Ling read Jiang Yingying's thoughts and was so shocked that he almost dropped his chopsticks. Someone save him. Elsewhere, Lotus Sun was enjoying her lunch in the student union office. She actually wanted to go to the canteen and eat with Wang Ling, but it was too easy to cause a commotion, and for safety and order, there was nothing she could do about it. Lotus Sun. Lotus Sun. At that moment, a very urgent voice came from outside the office. Lotus Sun looked up and saw Class 2's Li Yue rushing over with a worried expression. Bad news. Li Yue slammed her palm on Lotus Sun's desk, shaking the bowl of soup on the table until it spilled over. What's the matter? Speak slowly. Lotus Sun took out 2 pieces of paper and wiped the soup off the table. Li Yue cried out in alarm. Your husband Wang Ling is going to be snatched away. You don't talk nonsense. The girl instantly blushed. Hey, last time I helped you make a love bento, I thought you two could be together. In the end, I found out that you two are so long-winded. Li Yue had a disappointed expression as she spread her hands and sat down. Classmate Wang Ling is a blockhead, but you're not. Just grab him and smash him against the wall. You haven't told me what you meant by what you said just now. What do you mean he's going to be snatched away? Lotus Sun didn't understand. She calmly picked up the bowl of soup and took a sip, as if deep in thought. Actually, she had a rough idea of what had happened. But the more it was like this, the more she couldn't appear flustered. Otherwise, wouldn't others laugh at her? She's a transfer student. Her name is Jiang Yingying. She came to school to register today, and is eating with Wang Ling in the canteen right now, said Li Yue. As her bestie, she naturally had to speak bluntly. It's just eating, it's fine. Classmate Wang Ling won't care about her, will he? Lotus Sun smiled calmly. You're actually so calm. Li Yue found it a little unbelievable. She had wanted to observe the girl's reaction when she stomped her feet anxiously, but in the end, the girl's calm attitude in the face of danger was far beyond her expectations. Lotus Sun took out her phone and seemed to have sent a message somewhere. Right after that, she calmly ate her meal. Li Yue didn't understand what Lotus Sun had done. At the girl's gesture, she walked over to the window of the student union office and saw Jiang Yingying walk out of the canteen with a flustered expression. What did you do? Li Yue was a little incredulous. Do you know about the Gray Sect? Lotus Sun asked lightly as she picked up some food. Gray Sect? Which new literary exchange sect was set up among students? It seems they're all fans of Wang Ling's essays? Li Yue replied. Recently, Gray Sect culture had been very popular on the internet. Although she wasn't a member, it was impossible for her not to have heard of it. I just sent her an edict and sent her away, Lotus Sun replied. Edict? Of course, because I'm the sect leader. Lotus Sun answered calmly with a smile on her face. Why are you the sect leader? I just need to pay. Isn't it easy to be the sect leader? Lotus Sun smiled. In fact, the position of sect leader of the Gray Sect. She had already taken it down during the morning self-study session. She had calculated that Jiang Yingying would most likely launch a surprise attack. So she had made preparations in advance. Who would have thought it would actually come in handy? Ding. At that moment, Lotus Sun's phone suddenly vibrated. She received a text from Wang Ling. Thank you. Although the text was as concise as ever, the joy in the girl's heart was self-evident. This was the first time Wang Ling had taken the initiative to text her. Chapter 14:18. Gray Church Order. All instructors are to immediately head to the designated coffee shop for an important meeting and discussion. You are not to be absent without a valid reason. Otherwise, you will be expelled from the Gray Church and viewed as classmate Wang Ling's anti-fan. This was a message Lotus Sun had issued as the church leader. It actually wasn't a very important meeting, but everyone who attended would receive a red packet as a reward. It wasn't too bad. Giving out money was the most practical way to ensure that most of the Gray Church's grassroots wouldn't have any objections. For young girls, money was like dung. It would be very convenient for Wang Ling to send Jiang Yingying away by giving out money, because he didn't need to rack his brains to predict the other party's actions and then formulate countermeasures. But for Lotus Sun, it was a little inconvenient. It was much better than watching helplessly as other girls harassed Wang Ling. When Jiang Yingying received the order and hurried to the coffee shop that the Gray Church was working with, there were already Gray Church officers waiting there. These officers were all volunteers. Some weren't students, but had all joined voluntarily after being attracted by Wang Ling's essays. Having these volunteers working in the church was actually a good thing for students who were busy with their studies, since they could help out with management. What important meeting did the church leader announce? Jiang Yingying hurried to the coffee shop. She saw a lot of students from nearby schools who had hurried out during their lunch break to gather here. What on earth is it? Did classmate Wang Ling publish a new essay? There were both men and women in the crowd, but most of them were literature enthusiasts. No, it's actually nothing important, said one of the volunteer officers, who was in fact the coffee shop's curator. The curator smiled. Actually, the new church leader is giving out benefits to everyone. After everyone signs in, they can come to me for a red packet of 1,000 yuan as a creative fund. New church leader? Jiang Yingying looked puzzled, as if she didn't know about this. The new church leader was handed over this morning, and the old church leader stepped back to be the deputy church leader. He felt that the new church leader was more qualified than him. Those who are capable will be in charge. Also, the new church leader is very wealthy, which will help the Gray Church develop further, the curator said with a smile. He spoke up for Lotus Sun every time he opened his mouth, so of course he had received benefits. This was the evil side of a money-oriented society. However, Jiang Yingying was still relatively naive. She didn't understand why so many things had happened while she was registering at number 60 high school in the morning. Classmate Jiang, this is yours. The curator distributed the cash and registered Jiang Yingying's name. It was not until she received the red packet that Jiang Yingying realized that she had been tricked. She had clearly hooked up with classmate Wang Ling in the canteen earlier. In the end, he suddenly received an urgent message from the Grey Church's hierarch. In addition, this new sect leader was so generous with his money, which almost instantly reminded Jiang Yingying of the #1 enemy she would face after transferring to number 60 high school. Lotus Sun. The new sect master must be her. Damn it. What a cunning woman. Jiang Yingying gritted her teeth gloomily. She wanted to shout at the blatant bribery in the cafe. However, when she saw the smiles on the faces of everyone who received the red packets, she immediately understood that she was still too young. It could only be said that he deserved to be the future leader of Huagua Water Curtain Group. This method of buying people's hearts was indeed skillful. Jiang Yingying didn't have that much money on her, and she was too embarrassed to ask her grandfather for help. She could only think of another way. She, Jiang Yingying, wouldn't give up. Lotus Sun will see. Jiang Yingying snorted in her heart. Then she put the red packet back in her pocket. Elsewhere in the student union, it took Lotus Sun a long time to calm down. Wang Ling had actually taken the initiative to text her. This was a first that would go down in the annals of history. She was so happy that she couldn't put it into words. She had no choice but to cast the cooling spell on herself. The more it was like this, the more she couldn't let victory get to her head. For Lotus Sun, the battle had just begun. Jiang Yingying would be a problem after she officially enrolled at school tomorrow. She was the #1 target she had to be wary of. Apart from that, the second biggest problem was that girl from Sun Island, Ryoko Q. Lotus Sun was actually no stranger to this person. This was because Huagua Water Curtain Group and the Ryoko family actually had close dealings. The Ryoko family had once sent Ryoko Q to attend the company's annual party, and had met Lotus Sun face to face. Lotus Sun hadn't expected the Ryoko family to actually make a decision this year to send Ryoko Q to study in Huaxiao Nation. And to choose number 60 high, was this a coincidence? Or could it be that from the beginning, Jamiya Ryoko's target had been him, or someone from number 60 high? On the way back from school, Lotus Sun stared at the thank you message on her phone with a red face. This message was so precious that she had already written it down in her little notebook, in case she lost it. If one's mood could be said to symbolize the weather, then Lotus Sun, who was behind the car, was sunny for miles, while Jiang Xiaoche, who was driving, was rainy. This strong contrast made Lotus Sun feel a little uncomfortable. Brother Xiaoche, haven't you adjusted yet? Jiang Xiaoche sighed. I lost another 300 accounts. I told you long ago you have to change your approach. This kind of continuous harassment definitely won't work. Lotus Sun, who was in a good mood, decided to give Jiang Xiaoche some advice. Who on earth is that girl? Jiang Yingying. Jiang Xiaoche muttered the name weakly. Jiang Yingying? Lotus Sun thought she had heard wrong, and was dumbfounded for a moment. She was utterly astonished. Could it be that this world was really that small? Brother Xiaoche, I need to confirm whether this girl's Jiang is the Jiang in Ginger, and Ying is the Ying in Firefly? She also has short hair, has the air of a scholarly girl, and looks very gentle and quiet. Also, she looks a little like me? Lotus Sun asked tentatively. How do you know? Jiang Xiaoche looked at Lotus Sun in amazement. I also know that she's a student at Sword God Academy. She used to be, but she might not be now. Lotus Sun didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This Miss Yingying has already transferred to our school. She even came to register her student status this morning. What a coincidence. Jiang Xiaoche found it hard to believe. And Sword God Academy is pretty good. Why would she want to transfer to number 60 high? I guess she probably likes classmate Wang Ling, Lotus Sun replied. Jiang Xiaoche felt like he had a complete mental breakdown. How could he cultivate? Why was it this again? Dead fish eyes. Chapter 14:19. When Lotus Sun got home, she found Sun Yinger sprawled on the bed as if she had lost her soul. It looked like she had fought hundreds of rounds with CEO Ying last night, and had only just been released. How are you? Lotus Sun walked over and cast the waist cooling spell on Sun Yinger's waist. This was a new spell that the girl had developed on her own, and could lower the temperature of the waist joints when necessary, thereby reducing pain. She found that the temperature cooling spell had many uses. Not only could it calm the mind, it could also be used as a remedy for injuries and strain. In some sense, the temperature cooling spell could greatly reduce the frequency of women being violated, both at home and abroad. And it turned out that Lotus Sun really had foresight. Because in the near future, the temperature cooling spell would really evolve into a new generation of female anti-pervert spells, and be named the Icebird spell. It was said that someone who had developed the Thunder spell, Thousand Birds, had come up with this name. It could only be said that Chinese culture was broad and profound. The same birds had completely different meanings. Does it hurt? After casting the temperature cooling spell, Lotus Sun gently massaged Sun Yinger. Hee rong rong. I was just pretending. You fell for it. Who knew that at that moment, Sun Yinger would suddenly turn over and press Lotus Sun down on the bed. She propped her hands on either side of Lotus Sun's head and stared fixedly at her. The breath was so close that it could reach Lotus Sun's cheeks. The girl took a deep breath, and the expression on her face was a lot calmer than Sun Yinger had imagined. You're actually immune? Shouldn't you be blushing under normal circumstances? Sun Yinger said strangely, and then nodded with satisfaction. It's all my credit. As expected of me. Under my careful training, Rong Rong's skin has become thicker now. I've laid the groundwork for Rong Rong to chase Ling Jinren. I noticed, Inger, you're asking for a beating. No wonder CEO Ing likes to bully you so much. Lotus Sun looked at the person in front of her helplessly. I still have something important to do today. It's the Sword Dao conference, and I can't delay it. Get up first, be good. Okay, Rong Rong, it looks like you're immune to ordinary teasing now. I need to give you some extra training. At that moment, Sun Yinger's eyes turned shiftily. She suddenly made a hand seal and turned herself into Wang Ling. But the voice was still her own. Come, Rong Rong, let's kiss. Ing, you're too much. Lotus Sun pushed Sun Yinger away with all her might. And in the end, her face couldn't help burning up. She thought she was used to it. But only the heavens knew where this last Sun Yinger got her acting skills from. 8th, no random movements are allowed. At that moment, Loopy Toad's figure appeared in front of the two women in a golden teleportation light. When it landed, Loopy Toad brought with it Wang Ying's new rule. It looked at the scene in front of it, and felt that it was too beautiful. Sun Yinger hadn't removed the transfiguration spell yet, so she still used Wang Ling's face, but she was still wearing her signature black and white dress. Their lord was actually forced to dress in women's clothing. Although Loopy Toad knew that everything was fake, why did it still hurt its eyes so much? Needless to say, this Sun Yinger was truly too daring. Seeing Loopy Toad arrive, it was as if she had found her savior. Has the Sword Dao conference started? Loopy Toad nodded. Today's the group stage. You need to compete with the other 199 sword spirits in the King group to break through and become number 1 in your group. Let's go. Lotus Sun summoned Mysterious Sea and gripped the spirit sword tightly with a solemn expression. Nine Nether had chosen a relatively open area as the venue for the group stage this time. This was a deserted ancient sword city, the old sword capital of the Sword King world, and the center of the imperial capital 1,000 years ago. Because of its remote location, it was very inconvenient to transport resources and people, so the old sword capital had been abandoned after the capital was moved and became a deserted city. Lotus Sun and Loopy Toad arrived in front of the old sword capital. The old sword capital's city walls were much shorter than the new one, and had collapsed in many places. The stone city gates had long since been damaged, and were wide open. The outlines of old houses could be seen inside, but they were very badly worn out. After the old sword capital became a deserted city, it had become a place for many sword spirits to fight, and a natural training ground. But because of the Sword Dao conference today, this ancient sword city from the old era had finally regained some of its former liveliness. The city was a boiling cauldron of voices and bustling with noise. The sword spirits who were participating in the competition, as well as those who were watching the melee, had all arrived. What an amazing feeling. I never thought it would be on such a large scale this time. Lotus Sun couldn't help sighing in front of the ancient city. The girl didn't know that Nine Nether and the sword spirits under her command, Yu Ling, Mo Yu, Little Qian, Carter and the others, had worked together to mobilize countless sword spirits to hold this event. They had put in a lot of effort. Due to the lack of time, they hadn't even had time to build a new venue for the final battle. Nine Nether had originally wanted to build a new arena similar to the #1 martial arts dojo in the world. But due to time constraints, they could only use the old swords. There was a ready-made sword arena in the old sword capital. Although it was very dilapidated, it could still be used after some temporary repairs. Furthermore, it was as grand as 8 stadiums that could hold 100,000 people. All the participating sword spirits had been temporarily arranged to wait in the Sword King dojo on the edge of the arena. This had been the largest in the old sword capital. Now it was being used again after some simple repairs. Lotus Sun verified her spirit sword with a sword guard at the entrance, and the latter's expression changed. "So it's Miss Sun." The sword guard solemnly stood on both feet and saluted Lotus Sun before handing her a competition card. "Miss Sun, please go to the top floor Sky Room 1. "Thank you." The girl took the competition card with both hands, feeling a little nervous. She still had too little experience participating in a competition of this scale. Furthermore, the sword spirits in the king group? Were they all experts? Could she really win? As she walked up the stairs, Lotus Sun heard a lot of sword spirits talking about her. "Ah, it's that human girl. I remember her surname is Sun. She'll be competing with her sword spirit. So that mysterious sea is hers? She's a hot favorite to win the championship." These were the voices of the other contestants. At first, the girl felt a little embarrassed when she heard this, and smiled modestly. She walked briskly all the way to her resting room. When she sat down, she could still hear her own heartbeat. "Nervous?" asked Loopy Toad. "A little." Lotus Sun nodded. "There's nothing to be nervous about. Miss Sun just needs to perform as usual." At that moment, Woojin and Old Barbarian specially came over from their resting rooms to pay their respects. They were accompanied by Lung Ming. The two men held Lung Ming's small hands, one on the left and one on the right, and they looked like a family of 3 as they walked over. Sun Yinger was startled. "Holy shit. It's only been a few days since I last saw you. How come you two already have a child?" Old Barbarian and Woojin. Lung Ming. Chapter 1420. It wasn't strange for Sun Yinger to have such a strange way of thinking. This was because if 2 sword spirits fell in love with each other, and wanted to give birth to a new sword spirit, they could enter the primal chaos together. There was no such thing as a pair in the human world. Thus, in theory, 2 sword spirits of the same gender could give birth to a new sword spirit. As a matter of fact, the sword spirit's appearance was different from that of a male or female. In the Sword King realm, the gender of a sword spirit was only a matter of appearance. But in essence, all sword spirits were sexless, and there was no real distinction between genders. In the face of Sun Yinger's unintentional offense, Woojin and Old Barbarian didn't care too much. After all, Lung Ming's appearance had been very sudden. It was obvious that Lotus Sun and the others probably didn't know of Lung Ming's existence. "Miss Sun, this child is called Lung Ming, and he's a new little sword spirit born in the Sword King realm. We didn't give birth to him." Woojin laughed. Thinking of what Lotus Sun had just said, his sissy face blushed a little. Old Barbarian rolled his eyes. "Why the hell are you blushing?" "So it's a new little sword spirit. So cute." Lotus Sun squatted down and gently touched Lung Ming's face. Feeling a little embarrassed, Lung Ming shrunk behind Woojin. At the same time as she touched Lung Ming's soft cheek, Mysterious Sea's passive ability, Silent Nourishment, was activated. Wisps of invisible sword chi seeped into Lung Ming's body. Lotus Sun felt her vision blur, and she immediately saw Lung Ming's appearance clearly. This was the first time Mysterious Sea had used this passive skill, and it mainly used a specific kind of sword chi to identify things. This sword chi had the power to separate the false from the true and see through illusions. But it wasn't invincible, and not all illusions could be seen through. The King's Eye also had this kind of power, but in comparison, Silent Nourishment's sword chi was far inferior. And now, this power was reflected back to Lotus Sun through the passive version of One with the Sword. This gave Lotus Sun the ability to Silent Nourishment as well. It could be said that the current mysterious sea and Lotus Sun could almost be said to be one and the same. Lotus Sun also had all the passive abilities mysterious sea had. This little guy is actually a blade of grass? She rubbed her eyes to make sure she wasn't seeing things. Lung Ming might look young, but he has a bright future ahead of him. When he grows up, even a blade of grass can cut down the sun, moon and stars. Wu Jin rubbed Lung Ming's little head and said, "Oh, by the way, Miss Sun still doesn't know that Lord Jinka has already agreed to accept Lung Ming as his disciple, right? You've already taken him in as a disciple?" Lotus Sun was astonished. Yes. Old Barbarian nodded. In fact, this is the Sword King's protection for him. Otherwise, who knows how many evil people would have targeted this little guy. In this day and age, pedophiles are as common as the hairs on a cow. Whether it's a boy or a girl, you have to protect yourself. That's right. Loopy Toad nodded and couldn't agree anymore. Then it glanced at Lotus Sunday. You actually don't know? I remember I sent you a text message. Ah, sorry, maybe I wasn't paying attention. Lotus Sun held her forehead. Don't worry, I know it's a different price. I'll settle it with you. For the past 2 days, she had been too focused on dealing with Jiang Yingying that she had been distracted. Boss. Wu Jin and Old Barbarian had puzzled expressions on their faces at the same time. After not seeing each other for a few days, they felt that the relationship between Lotus Sun and Loopy Toad had suddenly become complicated. She's my boss now, and I'm responsible for gathering intelligence and reporting to her, Loopy Toad replied. Then Ling Jinren? Ling Jinren is naturally my boss. Ling Jinren is my spiritual boss. Miss Sun is my material boss. Loopy Toad's answer was full of survival instincts. Got it. Wu Jin and Old Barbarian instantly understood. A boss and a lady boss. Is that what you mean? More or less. Loopy Toad nodded. Don't talk nonsense. Lotus Sun was helpless. They had gone around in a big circle just to tease her. There was no one else. Everyone waited in Lotus Sun's heavenly room for about 5 or 6 minutes, and then they saw a sexy woman with a graceful figure wearing leather tights walk in from outside with a crystal magic ball in her hands. It was none other than Carter. The Bronze Group's group competition is about to begin. I'll take Lung Ming there, Carter said as she put the crystal ball on the table. Carter said as she placed the crystal ball on the table. This magic ball can be used for a live broadcast. Everyone will be able to see what's going on in the arena from their rooms. Thank you, Senior Carter. Lotus Sun smiled. Miss Sun, you're welcome. Please do your best in today's competition. According to the competition schedule, the King Group Showdown is the last group. After the introduction, Carter took Lung Ming's hand and left. He looked very nervous, and Lotus Sun could see the cold sweat running down Lung Ming's forehead as they left the room. Is the little guy really going to be okay? He looks even more nervous than I am. Lotus Sun was a little worried. It's his first time in a free-for-all. It's inevitable that he's nervous, Wu Jin said. By the way, is his battle strength really okay? I remember that this child just has a higher talent value. The free-for-all stage tests his actual battle strength, Loopy Toad asked. I heard that Lord Jinka and Lord Bai Qiao gave Lung Ming special training before the Sword Dao competition. It shouldn't be a problem for him to win first place in the bronze group, Wu Jin said after a moment of silence. It's only been less than 2 days. Loopy Toad was amazed. You underestimate Lung Ming's talent too much. For a genius, what they can learn in 2 hours may be more than what some people learn in 200 days, Wu Jin replied. Loopy Toad couldn't refute this, because it was the truth. Another 10 minutes or so passed. The image of the magic ball was projected onto the Grand Ancient Sword City's sword arena. Countless sword spirits were seated in the spectator area, and it was a dazzling sight. Every corner of the arena seemed to be filled with sword spirits like sardines. In less than 2 days, the Sword Dao competition had actually expanded to this scale. For one thing, Nine Nether and the others were indeed very good at organizing. And for another, Sword God Alloy was indeed very attractive. The Sword Dao competition was about to begin. At the same time, in the Sky No. 2 room next to Lotus Sun's, Wang Ling was also watching the competition. Like a projector, His king's eye directly projected the image on the screen into the air. On the table in the room, there were crispy noodle snacks of various flavors. On the side, Jinka sighed silently. Sword Master, don't you want to go next door and say hello? Wang Ling shook his head. He hadn't come for Lotus Sun in the first place. He just wanted to see Lung Ming's performance. Then he would help Lotus Sun investigate if there were any suspicious people standing in the way of her winning first place. That was right. It was just in passing. Chapter 14:21. Although Jinka had already taken Lung Ming as his disciple, he still needed to determine whether Wang Nuan's spirit sword was Lung Ming's through this actual combat. He needed to know how much Lung Ming had grown after 2 days of special combat training. This sword Dao competition was a good opportunity to test Lung Ming's learning efficiency. For him, learning ability was the key. After all, to find a spirit sword suitable for little girl Nuan's nanny, he had to be proficient in everything. And Lung Ming still had a lot to learn. The bronze group competition was about to begin. At the very front of the audience area at the old swordplay field was a spectator stand made entirely of crystal for the judges. 9 Nether, the sweet-talking Yu Ling, the sweet-talking Mou and Little Qian. The 4 judges of this sword Dao competition were all sitting in this crystal room. The bronze group competition is about to begin. I wonder how that little guy is doing? Yu Ling said. She crossed her slender legs, and her pink high pants Cheongsam fell to the ground along her long legs, attracting the attention of many sword spirits in the audience area. White. Idiot. Those are safety pants. You're the idiots. How can you disrespect Lady Yu Ling? Move your filthy eyes away. In the Sword King world, Yu Ling had always been very popular, which was to be expected. Mou also had a lot of fans, but because she was too active, she often showed her face in front of outsiders. Compared with Yu Ling, she seemed a little less mysterious. Ignoring the discussion in the audience area, 9 Nether also looked forward to the bronze group competition. I heard that Lord Jinka personally gave Lung Ming special training. What kind of special training? Mou asked curiously, the jade corolla on her head giving off a beautiful light. It seems to be mixed doubles. Lord Jinka and Lady Bai Qiao together, 9 Nether answered. F***K, isn't that domestic violence? Mou immediately felt sorry for Lung Ming. It was repaired after the fight. To prevent Lung Ming from being traumatized, I heard that Lady Bai Qiao erased his memory of the special training. Erased it? Then what's the point? Because he doesn't need to use his brain to remember it. Later in the battle, Lung Ming might just show muscle memory. Yu Ling and Mou were both shocked. Just how many times did he get beaten up to form muscle memory? Very soon, the sound of gongs and drums reverberated throughout the entire sword battle arena. The 200 sword spirits from the bronze group entered the arena. The 4 entrances to the sword battle arena were opened at the same time. At each entrance, 50 sword spirits were led into the arena by the Imperial Sword Guards in an orderly manner. They were arranged into 4 rows, forming a square formation. Lung Ming was in the group that came out from the eastern entrance. He was extremely small, but he stood at the very front. He looked like a tiny dot. In the spectator seats, many sword spirits were discussing this matter. This is the Sword Master's new disciple? It looks very ordinary to me. It reached the top of the sword steel with its extremely high talent value, but it has only been a few days since it was born. How strong can its actual combat strength be? Although the news that Jinka had accepted Lung Ming as a disciple had already spread like wildfire throughout the Sword King world, doubts were inevitable. No one doubted Lung Ming's talent. After all, the numbers on the sword steel could not be fake. But it had actually been less than 2 days since Jinka had accepted Lung Ming as a disciple to the start of the Sword Dao competition. Rounding up the number of hours, it hadn't even been 2 days. In such a short period of time, how much could a newly born sword spirit grow? Many people would draw a question mark on it. Facing the sea of people around the sword battle arena, and listening to the doubts in the air, Lotus Sun frowned slightly. In the heavenly room, Lotus Sun frowned slightly. She was worried about Lung Ming. She had wanted to take advantage of the Sword Dao competition to look for a sword spirit for Wang Nuan during the competition, But the atmosphere now was really too tense. She couldn't help feeling her heart in her throat. After all, it's such a grand sword Dao competition. Just looking at it makes one's heart pound. It's normal for Miss Sun to feel emotional. Wu Jing comforted her on the side. Rongrong's nervous reaction is so cute. Sun Yinger giggled on the side. Do you feel like you're waiting for your child's report card to come out? Lotus Sun was startled. Needless to say, Sun Yinger's words were spot on. It would have been better if she hadn't said it. Now that she said it, it did seem like a little. This was clearly her first time meeting Leng Ming, but she didn't know why she felt so worried for him. Maybe it was because he was Jinka's disciple. Since he had been accepted as Jinka's disciple, did student Wang Ling also have high hopes for Leng Ming? Little guy, you must do your best. Lotus Sun clenched her fists as she silently cheered Leng Ming on in her heart. Kiki. Sun Yinger gave a meaningful smile on the side. She hadn't paid much attention to the competition, and her gaze had been fixed on Lotus Sun the entire time. In comparison, the girl's interesting reaction was much more exciting than the competition. Imagine her family's Rongrong taking care of a child 10 years from now. Then, she would take her child to the parent-teacher conference and wait for that final report card. Perhaps she would be very nervous, right? Sun Yinger shook her head quickly as her imagination ran wild. She felt that she was thinking too much. What child? How could she have imagined the problem of having a child? And even if she had a child, who would it be with was also a problem. Wang Ying? That abominable gorilla. She would jump down from here and starve to death. And she would never agree to be with this guy. Boom. At that moment, the image in the magic ball was accompanied by a blazing explosion in the center of the sword battle arena. While Sun Yinger's imagination was running wild, the bronze group's free-for-all had already begun. To everyone's surprise, they had thought that this free-for-all would be a battle royale. In the end, the moment Nine Nether announced the start of the competition, except for Leng Ming, all the bronze group spirit swords turned into sword light and soared into the sky. Their movements were synchronized, and their targets were astonishingly synchronized. A total of 199 sword lights of different colors charged at Leng Ming. When these sword lights collided, there was a huge explosion. 2 spirit swords, one ice and one fire, broke through the thick smoke. They were the famous Ice and Fire brothers of the bronze group, and had been chosen to participate in this free-for-all according to their ranking. They were ranked 2nd and 3rd on the bronze group sword steel, only after Leng Ming. After Leng Ming's sword steel results came out, the 2 brothers had been looking for an opportunity to teach Leng Ming a lesson. But as soon as the competition started, they couldn't help it. What they didn't expect even more was that the other sword spirits in this competition were unexpectedly thinking the same thing as them. And they all attacked Leng Ming as soon as the competition started. Even if you're Lord Jinka's disciple, what can you do against this kind of attack? The Ice and Fire brothers sneered in their hearts. At that moment, an emerald green sword light soared into the sky. Powerful sword chi tore through the thick smoke. A boy in rattan armor expressionlessly patted the dust off his face and slowly walked out of the billowing smoke. He was completely unscathed, and there wasn't even a speck of dust on his face. This was the result of his special training after being hit by Jinka and by Qiao's mixed doubles. Leng Ming was just a blade of grass. But now this blade of grass was very hard. Chapter 1422. The scale of the Sword Dao meet was unprecedented, and even the bronze group competition was exciting. Leng Ming was besieged at the beginning, and there were many cheers in the venue. However, to everyone's surprise, when the thick smoke dissipated, the boy in rattan armor walked out unscathed. His entire body was emitting a green light, and the aura of the laws of nature. Leng Ming could no longer remember his memories of the special training, and he only knew that he had been beaten up by his master and his wife during the special training, and his sword body had been repaired after being shattered countless times. It must be because of the special training. At this moment, Leng Ming thought to himself. It was because when the attacks of the bronze group contestants landed on him, he didn't feel any pain at all. It was just like a mosquito bite. Due to the fact that Leng Ming was besieged at the beginning, all the sword spirits attacked him, and the 199 sword chi gathered at one point to form a huge explosion. Lung Ming did not feel any pain or itch. However, the explosion had already caused many sword spirits to be affected. More than half of the contestants were eliminated at once. Hence, including Lung Ming, there were less than 100 sword spirits left on the field, and most of them were injured. The explosion of the bronze group sword chi was also extremely powerful. That was the terrifying thing about the sword spirits born in the Sword King realm. Even if they were bronze group sword spirits, they would still be able to achieve great things on Earth. After the first round of testing, everyone present knew very well that the final opponent this blade of grass would face was the Ice and Fire brothers in the void. The two brothers were very strong, and if they joined forces, they would have the strength to fight the Silver Group sword spirits. Twin sword spirits were very rare in the Sword King realm, and the Ice and Fire brothers had not been nurtured for too long in the Sword King realm. Given time, they might be able to be ranked in the Diamond Group. How can a blade of grass be so tough? But that's it, I was just testing it just now. In the void, the Ice and Fire brothers crossed their arms and stared at Lung Ming condescendingly. The two brothers had long predicted that Lung Ming might have received special training from the Sword King before the start of the competition, so he wouldn't be defeated so easily. However, in fact, that was exactly what the two brothers wanted. It would be boring if he was defeated too easily. The current Lung Ming had been personally trained by the Sword King. If they could defeat Lung Ming in such a situation, then the two of them would definitely become famous through this battle. He might even gain Lord Sword King's favor and appreciation. At this moment, Lung Ming looked into the void. The pressure that the Ice and Fire brothers gave him was not as great as he had imagined. The pressure on him actually came mostly from Wang Ling, Jinka and Bai Qiao. Lung Ming was very clearly aware that these three people were watching his battle as well. Because of this, he didn't want to lose face. Just as this thought flashed through his mind, the nearby injured sword spirits that had yet to be eliminated suddenly soared into the sky again. They had a tacit understanding, and actually formed a sword formation on the spot. Heavenly Sun Sword Formation. Get rid of him first. Someone shouted. They formed a circle in the sky, shining like the sun. In the center of the Heavenly Sun Sword Formation, the sword chi interweaved together, constantly fusing together. Then it gave birth to a kind of sword chi that surged with powerful energy. It only took a few seconds. A beam of golden light fell from the sky like a huge sword and struck Lung Ming's face. This fusion sword chi was very strong. If Lung Ming hadn't gone through special training, he would have collapsed on the spot. But now things were different. The combined sword chi caused Lung Ming's rattan armor to smoke. Don't get in the way. Lung Ming didn't even bother to raise his head. He didn't care at all. With a light flick, a wisp of emerald green sword chi flowed out from between his fingers. This wisp of emerald green sword chi was very calm, and didn't have the slightest murderous intent. However, when it entered the combined sword chi in the sky, it suddenly exploded with a loud bang. As a mushroom cloud rose in the air, the sword spirits that had formed the sword formation were instantly blown to pieces and scurried around the entire sword battle arena like jumping eggs. After dealing with these sword spirits, Lung Ming turned to face his two opponents. The Ice and Fire brothers were also observing the battle, and were astonished by the results of Lung Ming's special training. This increase in battle strength was indeed too rapid. Brother! At that moment, Ice Sword turned to look at Fireman on the side. Looks like we can only cripple him. Fire Sword's thoughts coincided with Ice Sword's. They wanted to win Jinka's favor through this battle, but Lung Ming's rapid progress made them feel pressured. Even if they beat Lung Ming's talent was still there. As long as his talent was there, it was only a matter of time before he surpassed them. But if they crippled this kid in front of them in the competition, Lord Sword King might have no other choice. In the judges' seats, inside the crystal house, Yuling frowned slightly. She could feel that the Ice and Fire brothers were already accumulating strength. Furthermore, very strong killing intent. It looks like these two brothers have already decided to kill Lung Ming. It wasn't just Yuling. You also felt it. Lord Sword King is also watching this battle. This is to attract Lord Sword King's attention, Nine Nether said. It could only be said that as the representative of Sword King World, he instantly understood what the two brothers were thinking. These two brothers seemed to have a sure kill combination. What's it called? Mou lowered her head and pondered. It's the ice and fire blades, Little Qian replied. With sword chi all over their bodies, they charge at the opponent from the left and right at high speed. One uses the left leg and the other the right leg, and the two legs spin in a pincer attack, using the strength of the legs to crush the opponent's head. Hey, can the little guy handle it? Mou was worried. At the same time, the jade crown on her head changed color to a melancholy dark blue. This color-changing jade crown reflected Mou's current mood. If she wasn't emotional, it would be white. I don't think you need to worry too much. Nine Nether smiled. Although he didn't know what on earth the 2 days of special training had been about. But judging from Lung Ming's reaction in the face of the Heavenly Sun sword formation, it was likely that Jinka and Bai Qiao had already demonstrated all their combination techniques in front of Lung Ming in the last 2 days. In the next moment, the Ice and Fire Brothers combination technique, Ice and Fire Blades, was already upon him. He was sure that the Ice and Fire Brothers' next attack would definitely be a concentrated attack on him. Although Lung Ming couldn't remember where he had seen this scene before, he somehow felt like he had seen it before. His body reacted almost uncontrollably from muscle memory. When the brothers' ice leg and ham approached his head, he grabbed them with one hand and pinched their ankles. Lung Ming's body was light as he formed a spiral on the spot, as if he was dancing as he played with the Ice and Fire Brothers in the palm of his hand. This was the kind of strength that could overcome strength with softness. After spinning for a few seconds, the Ice and Fire Brothers were thrown away. When everyone came back to their senses, a Tai Chi disc had formed under Lung Ming's feet. This was a technique that used the brothers' strength to leverage on each other. Lung Ming didn't know how he had done it, but his body had moved involuntarily. After the counterattack was over, the Ice and Fire Brothers were huddled together in the sword battle arena, their clothes in tatters and their faces bruised and swollen. There was fear in their eyes as they stomped their feet and retreated continuously, mumbling in a panic. Who used Tai Chi? After a few seconds of silence, the entire sword battle arena burst into fiery cheers. It was true that the audience had always been fence-sitters. And this was the scariest thing about champion fans. Lung Ming heaved a long sigh of relief. He felt that he didn't embarrass his master. At this moment, in the depths of the infinite Milky Way, a layer outside the Milky Way, through the endless stars, a pair of turbid evil eyes opened. I've found the most suitable sacrifice. A moment later, a young voice was heard. Sir, you finally can't hold it in anymore? This voice came from a young man surrounded by stars. His figure was blurry, and only a faint outline could be seen under a trace of starlight. As he spoke, the surrounding stars collided and exploded. The two of them used the universe as a chessboard and the stars in their hands as chess pieces to play. I've waited for a long time for the Heaven Tomb grass to take form, and now the time is ripe. The owner of the turbid eye said calmly, when the old Rubik's Cube is assembled, that group of people will die. People have to pay the price for their foolishness. But that young man is not easy to deal with. Even I can't see his background. The young man surrounded by stars frowned slightly. I will fully understand him before the battle. I have already set up chess pieces in the Sword King realm. At this moment, the owner of the turbid eye said coldly. Chapter 1423. Lung Ming's victory in this battle was within expectations. Next was the showdown between the King group. Because this was the finale, there were also the showdowns between the Silver, Gold and Diamond groups. Including the time needed to clean up the competition venue, Sun Yinger estimated that it would take at least 2 to 3 hours for Lotus Sun to go on stage. Since she was bored, of course she had to have some fun. Sun Yinger's eyes darted around as she thought of a good way to tease Lotus Sunday. Rong, I don't know if you've sensed it, she said cautiously in Lotus Sun's ear. Her face burned and she got goosebumps all over. Yinger, what are you doing? You haven't noticed yet? Sun Yinger whispered in her ear. Ling Jinren is in Sky Room 2 next door. In fact, Sun Yinger hadn't actually sensed Wang Ling's aura at all. But she could sense Wang Ying. It wasn't that Wang Ying had leaked her aura. It was just that after being trained by Wang Ying for a long time, Sun Yinger had developed a habitual muscle reflex. This was because Wang Ying, the gorilla, often grabbed her wrist and banged it against the wall. As a result, Sun Yinger's wrist was now like a radar device used to detect Wang Ying's movements. As long as she was close to Wang Ying, her wrist would feel like it was being clamped down. Furthermore, the closer he was, the stronger the feeling of his wrist being bound became. During the showdown between the bronze group, Sun Yinger walked back and forth in the room tentatively, and finally found the source of the signal. She confirmed that Wang Ying was next door. Since Wang Ying was next door, it was obvious that Wang Ling was here as well. Classmate Wang Ling is here too? After hearing this news, a look of pleasant surprise appeared on Lotus Sun's face. She knew very well that given Wang Ling's personality, there was a high chance that he would choose to watch the match from home. But he had actually come to watch the match live. For her, this was definitely an extra surprise. She didn't know why, but the young girl suddenly felt that her mood was very good. Her previous nervousness was instantly swept away, and she didn't feel nervous at all. Wang Ling's presence, she felt very at ease. Rong, aren't you going to greet them next door? Sun Yinger chuckled and began to encourage the girl to take action. I haven't thought of what to say yet. Lotus Sun blushed and started to heat up again. Besides, classmate Wang Ling is clearly next door. If he doesn't come over, it's because he doesn't want to interfere with my competition, right? If I go, will I disturb him? It's okay. Just tell me what you want to say. I can help you pass the message. There's no need to go there. Sun Yinger's expression was somewhat treacherous. Yinger, the human mouthpiece, activate. Is this okay? After saying that, Lotus Sun glanced at Wu Jin and Old Barbarian. They were watching the competition in Lotus Sun's heavenly room. It wasn't that he was purposely refusing to leave. In fact, it was Nine Nether who had asked them to stay here. On one hand, he could better commentate on the match, and on the other, he could act as her bodyguard. It had to be said that both Wu Jin and Old Barbarian were sensible people. When they heard Lotus Sun's words, they consciously covered their ears with their hands. Do not listen to indecent things. They would not meddle in the affairs of the young couple. Besides, it was no good for them to know too much. Apart from that, Wu Jin and Old Barbarian also felt that this was the best way to prevent the dog food from exploding. Lotus Sun hesitated for a moment, then turned to Sun Yinger and said, "Then just help me say hello." "No. That's too simple. Don't you have anything in particular you want to ask?" Sun Yinger rubbed her chin and said, "For example, the Rubik's Cube task? Rong, didn't you say before that you were worried that something bad would happen if the collection process went too smoothly?" "That's right, but I can't tell what's wrong, it's just a sixth sense." The girl looked troubled. Also, classmate Wang Ling won't feel comfortable asking too many questions at once. Then ask a simple question. For example, what do you think of Jiang Yingying? It's best if you can write an essay of at least 800 words. What are you thinking about, Ing? Lotus Sun smiled bitterly. Classmate Wang Ling probably only knows 6 points in his essay. That's true. Sun Yinger nodded. Then how about this? Help me say hello first and then help me ask classmate Wang Ling. I want to invite him to Old Street this weekend and ask him if he's free. Lotus Sun mustered up her courage and said to Sun Yinger, sometimes opportunities were in one's own hands. She had to take the initiative. Okay. Sun Yinger nodded. Lotus Sun added, tell classmate Wang Ling that it's just the two of us. It won't be like the last time when we went to the Xiao family compound, with a bunch of people following us. The main thing was that Lotus Sun didn't need to worry about her safety now. If they ran into a killer organization like Shadowstream that had been hired by a competitor of Huaguo Water Curtain Group, she could handle it on her own. No problem. Then Sun Yinger agreed and turned into a shadow, slipping out. But the truth was that she didn't dare enter Wang Ling's room. She just pretended to pace back and forth at the door, and then made up an answer. Sun Yinger quickly returned to Lotus Sun's side. I asked him. Ling Zhenren said he can go. He's free. Really? Lotus Sun's eyes lit up. Sun Yinger had never seen the girl so happy, and for a moment, She suddenly felt a little guilty. Really? Knowing her, didn't you ask at all? Fortunately, Lotus Sun quickly noticed that something wasn't right with Sun Yinger's expression. In any case, this wasn't the first time this girl had been naughty. Given her understanding of Sun Yinger, it was very likely that Sun Yinger had made up an answer herself. If she had really asked, how could she have come back so quickly? Lotus Sun stroked Sun Yinger's head with a very gentle expression on her face. Since you asked, ask nicely. I won't blame you. Sun Yinger was silent for a while, then pursed her lips and said weakly, then, I'll really go. If I'm turned down, don't blame me. I won't blame you. Lotus Sun nodded. Okay. Sun Yinger realized that she had only wanted to tease Lotus Sun, but now it seemed that she had trapped herself. This was a hole she had dug herself, and even if she had to hold back her tears, she had to jump in. She was so nervous that she paced back and forth in front of sky number 2. The feeling of her wrists being bound grew stronger. After struggling for a few minutes, Sun Yinger gritted her teeth. Forget it. For Rongrong's happiness, I'll throw caution to the wind. She was just about to turn into a shadow and enter the room. The next moment, she was lifted up by a force. When Sun Yinger came back to her senses, she saw Wang Ying grab her wrist and push her against the wooden wall of the inn. What do you want now? Wang Ying looked at her with a slightly playful expression. Lord Ling is watching the competition. No one is allowed to disturb him. Sun Yinger's eyes glistened with tears. I just wanted to ask. You're not allowed. Wang Ying coldly said these 2 words. Sun Yinger was annoyed. Why do you have to control me wherever you go? What if I had to ask? I said you're not allowed. Wang Ying still maintained her attitude. Then I'll shout. Ling Zhenren will definitely hear me. Sun Yinger resisted with renewed vigor. You can try. Wang Ying sneered. I'll try. Sun Yinger snorted. She was about to speak. But in the next moment, she suddenly felt that Wang Ying's breath was suddenly closing in on her, using 2 domineering lips to swiftly seal her mouth. Chapter 1424. Wang Ling was very satisfied with Lung Ming's performance in the first battle. Although Lung Ming's learning ability couldn't catch up with Wang Ling's, he had passed. According to the 100-point system, the normal passing line was 60 points. But in Wang Ling's heart, 95 was a passing mark. 96 to 98 was average. 99 to 100 was outstanding. Wang Ling's preliminary assessment of Lung Ming's learning ability was 95. That was enough. Because Lung Ming was still young, there was still room for him to grow. At that moment, Wang Ying turned into a black shadow and slipped through the crack in the door. Then, visible to the naked eye, the black shadow gradually took on a human form and coalesced into Wang Ying's triumphant face. He whistled with a satisfied expression on his face. It would be perfect if he had a cigarette at a time like this. Wang Ling sighed in his heart. Shadow Dao was really a miraculous thing. It was clearly a power born in his body, but its personality was too different from his own. When Wang Ling had seen Wang Ying gagging Sun Yinger at the door just now, his mind had instantly gone blank. His first reaction was, isn't Wang Ying afraid that I'll suck out Sun Yinger's tongue? But in any case, the scene in front of him was still beyond Wang Ling's understanding. Shadows actually had no actual age. In theory, they weren't people. But Wang Ling's and Lotus Sun's shadows could mix. This was something Wang Ling hadn't expected. Don't worry, Ling Master, I've already planted a seed in him, Wang Ying said at that moment. Wang Ling knew what this seed referred to. But for some reason, when these words came out of Wang Ying's mouth, they sounded different. This was a defense seed that could be triggered in a moment of crisis. It was Wang Ling who had ordered Wang Ying to set it up. Generally speaking, you just needed to carve the defense seed's magic seal on your palm, and then lightly pat it like a stamp. Who knew that Wang Ying would directly choose to gaggle Sun Yinger? Such a method could be said to be ingenious. Sword Master is here. What are you worried about? To be honest, Jinka himself was very surprised that Wang Ling was personally standing guard at Sword King World this time. Naturally, Wang Ling had his reasons for being here in person. Wang Ling had predicted yesterday that there would be unforeseen events at the Sword Dao conference. There's an enemy attack. Wang Ying answered Jinka's question. Also, the other party is from outside the Milky Way. Infinite galaxy? Jinka instantly thought of this mysterious universe. The vastness of the endless Milky Way was far beyond the reach of the outer realm Milky Way. Back then, in search of Drought Star, immortal Zhen Yuan had roamed the Milky Way outside the Milky Way for 1,000 years, but hadn't been able to finish it. If he went to the endless Milky Way, with his immortal venerable realm, he might not be able to reach the end even if he walked for 1 billion years. What's your goal? Jinka asked again. This was the first time in history that an enemy from the infinite galaxy had appeared. It was precisely because he didn't understand the enemy that he felt uneasy. If it wasn't for the power of deduction which had given him this new term, he really wouldn't have known that there was actually another layer beyond the Milky Way. Was it really a cosmic nesting doll? He didn't know much about the infinite galaxy, and he didn't know what level the enemies from there were at. What if the other party was stronger than him? Wang Ling knew he was very strong. However, he had always understood the principle that there was always a higher mountain. Because of this, he had always been humble. He might turn the 6 great heavenly Daos into gems, and embed them into a glove to snap his fingers. The universe will be destroyed. Wang Ying said with a horrified expression. Jinka was horrified and almost took it seriously. Just as he was about to ask a question, Wang Ying continued. He's probably here for Lung Ming. Lung Ming, is that so? Jinka nodded to himself. This was a more reasonable answer. Lung Ming was transformed from heavenly tomb grass. What kind of place was the heavenly tomb? Rumor had it that it was a cosmic tomb that Dao ancestor Wang had built for himself. Buried in this tomb were all the treasures that Dao ancestor Wang had accumulated throughout his life. He clearly wasn't dead, but wanted to build a tomb for himself first. This was the standard thinking of a big shot. Rumor had it that Dao ancestor Wang had built the heavenly tomb when he was middle-aged. He had thought that his time was coming, so he had built the tomb ahead of time. In the end, even Dao ancestor Wang himself hadn't expected that he could be reincarnated. This had directly led to this heavenly tomb that he had built, and to this day, no one had moved in. The location of the heavenly tomb is very vague, and we don't know its exact location yet. It could be outside the Milky Way, or it could be in the infinite galaxy. Wang Ying said. Lung Ming was transformed from heavenly tomb grass. When Dao ancestor Wang came to Sword King world back then, it was a withered grass that stuck to the soles of his feet. Who would have thought that after the baptism of time, the withered grass would come to life again, and in the end, it would successfully give birth to Lung Ming in Sword King world. At this point, Jinka actually already had a general idea. This enemy from the infinite galaxy was looking for Lung Ming, and their ultimate goal was the heavenly tomb. In order to obtain Dao ancestor Wang's treasure. So the reason why you came here in person is because, you're right. Wang Ying knew what Jinka was thinking, and a solemn expression appeared on his face. My thoughts on this point are the same as Lord Jinka's. We've never come into contact with an enemy from the infinite galaxy before. If we underestimate them, we might cause an unimaginable disaster. The first match is Lung Ming's. The people from the infinite galaxy haven't made a move yet. Commander feels that the other party will most likely show up when Miss Sun goes on stage, so he had me set up defensive seeds in advance. That is to say, this time, Commander and I will do our best to deal with this enemy from the outer realm, Wang Ying said. Jinka was silent 3 times. Looking at this situation, he felt that he might witness history. If they went all out, didn't that mean that the Dao Talisman seal would be completely removed? Of course, Jinka also felt, Wang Ling and Wang Ying. He was thinking too much. His understanding of the infinite galaxy was limited. But Jinka felt that he still had some understanding of Wang Ling. No matter what the background of this enemy from the infinite galaxy was, even if you didn't remove the talisman seal, the other party would still die. Wang Ling. This was the man whom Wang Ling had fallen in love with at first glance. Jinka felt that he had good taste. Elsewhere, in Lotus Sun's heavenly room, as Wang Ying had expected, Sun Yinger had completely shut herself off. Don't crying. President Ying probably didn't do it on purpose. Lotus Sun tried to comfort her. You're still speaking up for him. Sun Yinger cried even harder. She touched her belly and tried to calm down. If he kissed me, then so be it. Why did he blow air into my mouth? Lotus Sun stared at Sun Yinger's big belly and really didn't know what to say. She had actually been kissed by President Ying. For some reason, Lotus Sun felt a little sour in her mouth. Chapter 1425. At the same time that the Sword Dao meet was being held in the Sword King realm, the core members of the Battle Sect's perfected Venerate Hall were also watching the grand competition through remote surveillance. Tyrant was meditating at the front. He used the symbol to penetrate his ocular power into the blade storm of the Sword King realm, and saw the battle that was happening inside. Then, the images were transmitted back through the eye power. Then it was projected by the ring scar on the monk's head, forming a projection in the void. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal exclaimed in his heart at this scene. As expected of Senior Golden Lamp. Besides emitting smoke to cook hot pot, this ring scar actually has this function. It's just some insignificant tricks. Tyrant smiled modestly as usual. He was also paying special attention to the Sword Dao meet, but his focus was not on Lotus Sunday. At the Sword Dao meet, in the monk's eyes, it was a foregone conclusion that the girl would win the championship. And the key point was still the unknown enemy from the infinite galaxy. When Wang Ling had deduced this last night, all the core members of Battle Sect had already known about it. Of course, Lotus Sun didn't know that. That was Tyrant's suggestion so that she could be at ease and focus on the match before her. As for the matter of protecting Earth, it would be left to this group of men to handle. Now that Wang Ling was in Sword King world, the monk was Earth's last line of defense. Although the ultimate goal of the unknown opponent from the endless Milky Way was the Sword King realm, they still had to be on guard. What's Infinite Galaxy's opponent like? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal asked. After getting to know Wang Ling, he realized that all the cultivation knowledge he had accumulated was of no use at all. Because of Wang Ling, he had gotten to know even more almighty seniors who were hiding among the cultivators. Because of Wang Ling, his understanding of the map view had also been completely expanded. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal suddenly realized that he had a lot of blind spots in his knowledge. And Wang Ling played the role of constantly breaking through his blind spots. Not only did it allow him to come into contact with a higher level of knowledge, but it also allowed him to rub his current understanding of cultivation knowledge against the ground. The infinite galaxy is too far away, so this penniless monk doesn't go there often. Every time before we go, we have to prepare a large amount of resources in advance in case of emergency, said the monk. He pinched his fingers together and calculated. If he were to travel to the infinite Milky Way, it would take about half a year. Wang Ling aside, given his realm, it would take him half a year. It was impossible for anyone else to get there without the help of external forces. Rumor has it that the heavenly tomb that Dao ancestor Wang established is in this boundless galaxy. This penniless monk went there more than 76,000 times. Hearing this, everyone's mouth twitched. He had been there more than 76,000 times. And the monk actually called this not much? However, with Tyrant's experience of nearly 4,000 reincarnations, perhaps the number of trips to the infinite galaxy was not that rare. The infinite Milky Way is too vast. Even a small space there is bigger than the Milky Way. The monk lamented. Although this poor monk has worked many times, the exploration rate of the infinite galaxy is less than 0.1%. Senior, did you not discover any signs of living beings? At least, I haven't found anything in the many times I've explored. The monk said. Because of this poor monk was also very surprised when Ling Jinren suddenly said that there was an unknown opponent from the infinite galaxy. So we can only wait now? Ling Jinren and I originally deduced that their target was Lung Ming. But Lung Ming's battle is already over, and the other party still hasn't made a move. Is it for Miss Lotus Sun? Or rather, both Lung Ming and Miss Sun are targets. The monk lowered his eyes and said thoughtfully, let's watch them make a move. After they fight, we'll know their true combat strength. Saying that, everyone turned their attention back to the Sword Dao competition. The competition for the King's group was about to begin. Lotus Sun, the #1 foundation establishment cultivator on Earth, was about to take the stage. When she walked into the periphery of the sword arena, the ruckus in the arena reverberated in her ears. Her expression, however, was much calmer than she had imagined. The strands of sword chi that flowed through the surroundings were all probing her cultivation. Many sword spirits had question marks on their faces. Human? Why can a human at the foundation establishment stage also participate in the sword Dao competition? Haven't you noticed yet? This human has become one with her sword. A sword spirit with outstanding eyesight explained. Lotus Sun's passive version of becoming one with her sword made her, and the spirit sword, indistinguishable. Although her realm was still at the foundation establishment realm, the overall increase in combat strength was very considerable. The 50 people at the east entrance, please line up in an orderly manner, we're ready to enter, said a royal sword guard at the front of the line. Lotus Sun was at the end of the line at the east entrance. In the past, Lotus Sun would definitely be the first to be in the limelight. But now, she had indeed changed a lot. On the other hand, that was also Lotus Sun's own thoughts. After all, the Sword King realm was the world of sword spirits, and it did not seem reasonable for a human like her to participate in the Sword Dao competition. Long before the start of the competition, everyone had been quite critical of the human's participation in the Sword Dao competition. Although Mysterious Sea had a high ranking on the Sword Dao ranking, many sword spirits didn't like him even though he had made a comeback due to his hybrid quality. This time, Lotus Sun chose to participate in the Sword Dao competition because she wanted to win the Sword God alloy and choose a suitable sword spirit for Anwan. On the other hand, it was also for Mysterious Sea's sake. The Sword King realm was Mysterious Sea's hometown. Lotus Sun didn't want Mysterious Sea to still be looked down upon and discriminated against after returning to his hometown. She wanted to bring Mysterious Sea along and tell all the sword spirits in the Sword King realm that Mysterious Sea was not a useless inferior spirit sword. Even if he came from a poor background, he could still make a comeback. Even if he was lucky, so what? Luck was also a part of one's strength. When the gate of the east entrance slowly opened, Lotus Sun was wearing a dark blue Taoist dress and holding Mysterious Sea with her head held high. This Taoist dress was the +0 world-defying Taoist dress that Awan had given her previously, and it had now become her combat suit. She followed at the back of the line and walked out against the light. With the appearance of the only human girl, the sword arena was in an uproar again. Although there were many sword spirits watching, not many of them had actually seen Lotus Sun before. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the girl received all kinds of scorching gazes, and she began to feel the pressure that Lung Ming was carrying before the start of the competition. Interesting, a human girl actually brought her inferior sword to participate in the competition. She really dared to come. She's quite cute. She's my type. But does anyone know why that inferior sword in her hand is ranked 7th on the sword rankings? Who knows? Maybe it's just because her skin looks better? Up until now, the rhythm of Lotus Sun's participation in the competition had never stopped in the Sword King realm. In fact, even Nine Nether hadn't expected the sword spirits of the Sword King realm to be so exclusive. Girl, aren't you going to release your sword chi? Let us see how powerful this inferior sword ranked 7th on the sword rankings is. A meddlesome sword spirit shouted loudly in the spectator stands, immediately causing another storm. Lotus Sun closed her eyes slightly and took a deep breath, doing her best to calm herself down. Then, she used her slender and fair fingers to touch the scabbard and drew the sword inch by inch in the face of the clamor around her. As you wish. The next moment, the girl opened her beautiful eyes. But she had only drawn out less than 3 centimeters of the sword when Mysterious Sea's sword chi, like a raging sea, surged out from the gap and swept through the field like a tsunami. In the field, all the sword spirits were horrified. This powerful sword chi overflowed and surged in the field, causing illusions to appear in their eyes. The sword battle arena in front of them had suddenly turned into a vast ocean right before their eyes. And in the sea, everywhere was water. Chapter 1426. Lotus Sun's current strength was incomparable to before. When this aura was released, the hem of her skirt billowed along with the sword chi. The blue skirt billowed like ocean waves. The sword spirits in the stands were all horrified by this powerful sword chi. They couldn't imagine that an inferior spirit sword could burst forth with such power. Most people were frightened by this sword chi. But on such an occasion, it was inevitable that some old gentleman would appear. Go up. Go up a little more. Yes, we're almost there. Some sword spirits stared at the girl's blue skirt, wanting to catch a glimpse of the scenery below. Earlier, they had deliberately followed the crowd to provoke Lotus Sunday. Their goal was to provoke this human girl's anger. Because sword chi basically went up from below. Once it erupted, it was very easy for it to be exposed. However, the result was a huge disappointment to the old gentleman among the sword spirits. Because just as the hem of her skirt was about to be blown up, the anti-gravity mode of Lotus Sun's skirt had been activated. It could only be said that this was the skirt Awan had given her. Anti-gravity mode was very practical for every girl. In the arena, the anti-gravity blue skirt swayed wildly, but didn't get blown up. Lotus Sun slowly pulled Mysterious C's sword out of its scabbard. With every inch it was pulled out, the raging and roaring sword chi in the arena surged a little more. When the sword was completely pulled out, the passive version of One with the Sword was fully activated. After a flash of light and shadow, Lotus Sun and Mysterious C's figures had completely fused into one. The girl's blue eyes were even deeper than before, as if there were stars in them, emitting a beautiful and moving luster. Mysterious C's dark blue evening dress also fused perfectly with them. There were many more ripples symbolizing the sea on the hem of the skirt, making it look even more magnificent than before. Even the color of her hair had changed. After becoming one with the sword, it was dyed Mysterious C's silver gray color. Of course, none of this was important. The key was, the girl found that her chest seemed to have become a lot heavier. The monk had warned her that she had to be extra careful when using Mysterious C on Earth, so she didn't need to unsheath it unless it was absolutely necessary. After fusing with 3 Heavenly Dao magic cubes, the newly upgraded passive version of One with the Sword had to be completely unsheathed in order to display this kind of fusion mode. So this was the first time Lotus Sun had experienced such a fusion. In the heavenly guest room, Sun Yinger was so excited that she spoke incoherently. Rongrong, you've grown up. That's great. If Rongrong can grow, then so can I. In the future, we will be able to realize the airbag cushioning plan. Loopy Toad opened its mouth but in the end didn't say anything. It didn't know where Sun Yinger had inherited the label of an experienced driver. She really could open up any kind of broken road for her. On the other side, in the sword battle arena, Wu Jin and Old Barbarian, who were also participating in this competition, were deeply impressed by the sword chi released by Mysterious C. As expected of Miss Lotus Sunday, the two sighed inwardly. Of course, they weren't participating in the competition to win the championship, but to ensure Lotus Sun's safety. Thus, when they entered, Wu Jin and Old Barbarian were both thinking about how they could showcase their outstanding acting skills. However, what surprised everyone was that when the King Group competition began, not a single sword spirit took the initiative to attack the other sword spirits. This was the difference in battle tactics between the sword spirits of the King Group and the Bronze Group. This was also one of the reasons why the Bronze Group wasn't as good as the King Group. Especially in this kind of chaotic battle, the one who took the initiative to attack would definitely be the one at a disadvantage. Large-scale attacks would only be met with even fiercer focus fire, and they would be the first to be eliminated. So the sword spirits of the King Group had the same idea before the competition began. And that was to take the initiative to form alliances. Eliminate the other sword spirits of the King Group first. As for how to choose an ally, for the sword spirits of the King Group, this wasn't something they needed to think about at all. Factions could be easily divided according to the material of the sword, or the type of the sword. Thus, when the King Group competition began, the entire sword battle arena was enigmatically silent. Lotus Sun could feel the overflowing sword chi converging in the air. The sword spirits of the King Group were dispersing their sword chi, and using it to establish a special spiritual connection to search for their own kind. Then all kinds of voices of forming factions surged through the sword battle arena. Great sword party. Come with me. If you don't, you're just a lackey. If the heavens hadn't given birth to my longsword, all eternity would be like a long night. Where is the long sword party? Many of the sword spirits watching the competition were puzzled. They didn't understand why the sword spirits of the king group hadn't started fighting yet. Because their cultivation levels were too low. They couldn't hear the sword spirits of the king group communicating with their sword chi. In the judges' seats, Yuling frowned slightly. This kind of alliance is actually disadvantageous to Miss Sunday. The sword spirits of the king group have formed small teams like this, and their attacks are more organized and disciplined. Plus, they're hostile to Miss Sun's existence. I'm afraid it's going to be a little difficult. Not necessarily. Nine Nether shook her head and said, Miss Sun is Lady Bai Qiao's disciple. You saw the sword chi when she became one with her sword. There's something very strange. I don't know why I can sense the power of Heavenly Dao in Mysterious C's sword chi. Yuling frowned slightly. She still didn't know that Mysterious C had fused with the Heavenly Dao magic cube. Nine Nether smiled. Mysterious C now has 4 cores. He has 4 Heavenly Dao magic cubes in his body. 4 Heavenly Dao magic cubes. Yuling almost cried out in surprise. When she realized that she had forgotten herself, her little face turned red. Why did he fuse so many? She's Lady Bai Qiao's disciple. Of course she gets preferential treatment. Now that the new magic cube has replaced the old magic cube, it's good that the old magic cube has been recycled and reused, said Nine Nether. Who knew whether it was out of envy or jealousy, but Yuling snorted softly. That's all there is, Lemon. By now, a full 3 minutes had passed since the start of the match. The sword spirits of the king group hadn't moved at all. They were using their sword chi to quickly communicate, and the sounds of teams forming rang out incessantly. At that moment, in the mental space created by sword chi, someone suddenly shouted, Lotus Sun, I love you. I am Big Sword. I will always support Lotus Sun. Miss Sun, I'm on your side. No one can stop me. The short sword party will always love Lotus Sun. After these 2 shouts, the sword spirits of the king group who had been forming teams all revealed angry expressions. Damn. Who shouted that? It's so weird. There's a traitor in our sword spirit team. No. It's not just one. It seems like there are many. In the sword chi channel, Endless and Old Barbarian changed their voices in various ways to sow discord in order to stop the sword spirits of the king group from forming an alliance. Very quickly their plan took effect. When the sword spirits who had been looking for a team heard this, they couldn't restrain their anger, as if everyone they looked at was a traitor. The scene quickly became chaotic. Lotus Sun's eyes turned wary. At that moment, a female sword spirit with short white hair and a pair of leather shorts suddenly charged at Lotus Sunday. The day the broken sword is reforged, the day the night returns. It's all your fault, human woman. Eat my sword first. I'm going to cut you down from Mount Everest into a flat-topped mountain. Chapter 1427. The sword spirit, who had short white hair, and was wearing a midriff-bearing leather vest and sexy leather shorts, brandished her large green sword and made funny faces as she slashed toward Lotus Sunday. This sword spirit was called Cool Wind, and as her name suggested, she was dressed very coolly. The ghost face sword technique with the taunting effect was one of her killing moves. This sword technique had a facial illusion effect, and if you looked her in the eye, you would be provoked into anger. In a fight, being provoked was actually a big taboo, because anger could affect a person's normal judgment and lead to mistakes. But Mysterious C's sword chi was extremely powerful, and in the face of such an illusion, the silent nourishment ability was activated. When the sword chi spread out, all the illusions were seen through. Cool Wind's ghost face sword technique had no effect at all in front of Lotus Sun, and it was like a punch hitting cotton. Looking at the sword spirit who was making funny faces at her and slashing at her, Lotus Sun fell into a brief silence. Under normal circumstances, if she saw this ghost face, she would definitely be angry. But because the ghost face sword technique had failed, Cool Wind's grimacing looked more like she was acting cute. Very cute. She wanted to pinch her own face. But at this moment, Lotus Sun suddenly realized something. Could it be that this was the legendary Lightspeed QA? In the face of Cool Wind's attack, Lotus Sun swiftly drew her sword to block. Mysterious Sea's sword chi was more profound than Cool Wind had imagined. The moment the blades collided, she felt all the strength in her body disappear like a clay ox in the sea, swallowed up by Mysterious Sea's boundless rage sword chi. Then a powerful backlash came, causing Cool Wind to be sent flying. Watch out! Although the girl had said some outrageous things to her at the beginning, she didn't take it to heart. Instead, she was worried about Cool Wind's comfort. The moment Cool Wind was sent flying, she felt that the sword chi from Mysterious Sea's backlash was like a digging tractor crashing into her at high speed. Just when Cool Wind thought she was going to be seriously injured and eliminated, the incomparably ferocious sword chi instantly disintegrated halfway, turning into a gentle force that supported her waist and firmly placed her on the ground. Sorry, I used too much strength, Lotus Sun said. She felt that she didn't have good control over Mysterious Sea's power. The competition was one thing, but she didn't want to seriously injure the sword spirit here. Repaying evil with good? As expected of Miss Lotus Sun, but this is a competition. Swords have no eyes. Nine Nether shook his head in the judging panel. He felt that the girl was a little too naive. However, at this moment a shocking scene occurred. Just as Lotus Sun was speaking, another streak of sword chi sneaked up on her from behind. Seeing this, Cool Breeze hurriedly rushed over, pushed her away, and fought with the owner of the sword chi. Bang! After the sound of swords clashing, the two figures in the air quickly separated. Sneak attack from behind? Who do you think you are? The irascible Cool Breeze scolded loudly. She didn't look like a girl at all. You didn't have to save me just now. Lotus Sun looked at Cool Wind's back and smiled. Cool Breeze turned his head and blushed. Humph! Who wants to save you? I just don't want to give up my prey to others. As soon as he said this, Cool Breeze collided with another streak of sword chi that had attacked Lotus Sunday. So annoying. Why do you always have to target my prey? At that moment, Cool Breeze gripped his big sword and roared angrily. Then I'll kill all of you. And then kill my prey. He roared very loudly, but Lotus Sun could clearly feel that Cool Breeze's hostility had completely disappeared. K. She actually defeated a sword spirit just like that. In the judging panel, Mou couldn't help cursing as she began to realize that this Miss Sun in front of her was different from the others. This is Lotus Sun's domain. In the heavenly room, Loopy Toad looked at this familiar scene and felt that it was recalling a lot of things. The essence of Lotus Sun's domain was the power to capture people's hearts. This kind of power generally only worked on passers-by, but its effect would weaken over time. With the power of the Mysterious Sea Sword Chi, Loopy Toad was surprised to find that Lotus Sun's domain seemed to have been upgraded. It could automatically increase the favorability of those around it and attack it. In just one move, the girl had defeated a sword spirit, which stupefied Loopy Toad a little. In Loopy Toad's view, Lotus Sun had always possessed an incredible power. Unfortunately, the power of the domain is still too weak. At least for little Master Ling, it's far from enough. At that moment, Loopy Toad was lost in thought as it gazed at the image on the screen. In the sword battle arena, Loopy Toad was relying on the favorability effect of Lotus Sun's domain. It seemed that Lotus Sun really had gathered a lot of allies. At first, the King Group sword spirits had clamored to form an alliance to eliminate Lotus Sun, but in the end, it had turned into an alliance to protect her. Of course, the two actors, Woojin and Old Barbarian, had also played a big part in this. Following Lotus Sun, they repeated the same trick they had used on the Cool Breeze. They pretended to attack Lotus Sun from behind, and then lured the sword spirits protected by the girl into helping her. Sorry, I didn't do it on purpose. Does it hurt if the sword chi is a little stronger? Careful. Sneak attack from behind, how shameless. Who wants to help you? I just can't stand them using dirty tricks. Sorry, I almost seriously injured you. Hey, someone's sneak attacking you from behind. Get out of the way. Leave it to me. Don't get me wrong, I'm not helping you. I'm just an upright spirit sword. In the sword battle arena, these three mystical sentences were repeated countless times. Then more and more sword spirits inexplicably joined Lotus Sun's alliance. What the hell is going on? Why are so many people helping this human girl? In the audience seats, many of the sword spirits watching were so angry that they stamped their feet. Most of them had placed their bets on the King Group's Sword Dao Meet sword spirits and had paid a huge price. Some of them had even gone bankrupt and invested all their finances in betting on the Sword Dao Meet. In the end, no one had expected that less than 10 minutes after the start of the King Group's Sword Dao Meet, a third of the sword spirits had already been defeated and had automatically joined the Protect Lotus Sun camp. Looking at the flustered and exasperated sword spirits in the audience seats, Wu Jin and Old Barbarian sneered in their hearts. Gambling dogs die a horrible death. In the end, 70% of the King Group's sword spirits had been defeated by the girl. It looked like there was already no suspense in this match. However, in Skyroom number 2, from beginning to end, the expression on Wang Ling's face didn't relax. He could sense that the people from Infinite Milky Way were about to make a move. Chapter 1428. In the Sword Dao Meet, after using the upgraded Lotus Sun domain to obtain an overwhelming advantage in all aspects, it seemed like the champion was already a foregone conclusion. In order to protect the girl, the sword spirits that had been conquered engaged in a fierce battle with the remaining sword spirits, resulting in heavy losses on both sides. In the end, there were less than a dozen sword spirits left in the field. Led by Old K, the last 5 sword spirits would rather die than submit. All of them glared angrily at Lotus Sun and the sword spirit bootlickers who had been conquered behind the girl. At this moment, Old K stood at the forefront in his thick golden armor, his beard fluttering in the wind, looking very much like a Saint Seiya. I, Old K, am not like those bootlickers behind you. Bootlickers? It means lackey plus bootlicker. The sword spirit called Old K was surrounded by golden sword chi. His nickname was the Sword of the King, and he was the 12th ranked sword spirit. His true form was a poker card K. It was said that Dao ancestor Wang had been in seclusion in the Sword King realm, and had played landlord with his clone out of boredom. Who would have thought that even the poker card would become a sword spirit? Old K, what's done can't be undone. I think you'd better give up. You can't imagine Miss Sun's charm. We've already decided to push Miss Sun to win. If you don't, we'll launch a collective attack and take you down with us. Wu Jin said, earnestly analyzing the situation for Old K. Now, not including Miss Sun, there are still 6 of us left. We have one more than you. An old man hasn't even used his 5-second man yet. If we go all out at the end, you'll definitely lose. Not necessarily. Old K snorted. As a man with the title of the Sword of the King, he naturally wouldn't admit defeat so easily. Crack. He stabbed his giant golden sword into the ground. At this moment, 3 different colored sword chi appeared around his body, gushing out from the giant golden sword. It's actually the Great Sword Gambling Technique. Wu Jin frowned. What's the Great Sword Gambling Technique? Although she knew that her question might be inappropriate at this time, Lotus Sun still couldn't suppress her curiosity. Miss Sun, do you see the golden, blue, and red sword chi on that giant golden sword? Wu Jin explained. This 3-colored sword energy was the foundation of Old K's sword gambling art. The golden sword chi could cause those who were attacked by the sword chi to fall into a paralyzed state, unable to move, as if they had been drugged. The blue sword chi could quickly heal the injuries of a specific person. The red sword chi could create an extremely powerful suicidal sword strike, causing a huge explosion. Now that the champion group's group matches were nearing the end, almost everyone was injured to varying degrees. In a situation where they were at a disadvantage in terms of numbers, Old K choosing to gamble with swords at this time was indeed a wise choice. When Old K pulled the giant sword out of the ground, the originally emitted 3-colored sword chi would go berserk, causing Old K's golden giant sword to change color. At that time, the giant sword would randomly choose one of the 3 sword energies and transform it into its own power. Wu Jin didn't expect Old K to be so desperate. This was because this greatsword gambling art was a secret technique that would cost one's cultivation. Although it was Old K's ultimate skill, very few people had actually seen Old K use it. You actually want to gamble with swords? Wujin frowned. What's the point of saying so much? Since he wants to gamble, then let's make him fail. Cool Breeze said from the side. She wanted to rush out and stop the release of this technique. However, Wujin stopped her on the spot. If you don't want to be cursed, then stay put. Curse? Cool Breeze was puzzled. Once the Greatsword Gambling Arts array is formed, we can only gamble with him. Legend has it that the Greatsword Gambling Arts array contains a curse of the Tao ancestor. If we interfere with the array, we will definitely be cursed by the Tao ancestor, Wujin said. At this point Old K, who was wearing heavy golden armor, couldn't help but laugh. It seems that you understand my situation very well. Not bad. You're right. Interfering with the array will indeed cause terrible things to happen. Perhaps because he expected that no sword spirit would dare to cross the line and forcibly interrupt the Great Sword Gambling Arts array. Old K's expression was particularly excited and confident. However, for Old K, there were still variables in this Great Sword Gambling Art. Although sword spirits could indeed be cursed, if it was a human, in fact, he hadn't done any corresponding experiments. Thus, Lotus Sun became Old K's only worry after he started the Great Sword Gambling Art. Perhaps he was afraid that the young girl wouldn't understand the rules and would ruin his plans. Now that Old K had calmed down, he turned his gaze to the only human girl present. Miss, let me ask you, do you dare to gamble with me? If Senior insists on doing things his own way, of course I can't stop him. I just hope that Senior won't hurt himself. Also, gambling itself is wrong, Lotus Sun advised patiently. Lotus Sun patiently admonished it, but she was certain that the sword spirit of the poker sword would never listen to her. Good. You're indeed a heroine. But there's no need for Miss to worry about gambling harming the body. Old K laughed fiercely. If I draw the red card, no matter what the result is, I will forfeit this match. In the current situation, if the giant sword was drawn, both the golden and blue sword chi would be advantageous to their side. But if they drew the red sword chi, then the situation would truly be hopeless. Both had about a 33% probability. The overall probability of Old K drawing the sword chi favorable to him was 66%. He felt that he wouldn't be so unlucky. Miss Sun, don't be afraid. If he draws the red self-destructing sword chi, he's finished. At this time, Old Barbarian also said, when the time comes, I'll add the power of 5 seconds True Man to you, so that you're completely immune to this damage. Actually, I can do it myself. Say no more, Miss Sunday. Our goal in this competition is to help you win the championship. Old Barbarian said telepathically. You don't need to worry about anything else. I know Miss Mysterious C is very strong, but you have to give us a chance to show off. Faced with Old Barbarian's enthusiasm, Lotus Sun really didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Calculating that the Great Sword Gambling Art was about to finish charging up, Old K stepped forward and grasped the giant sword's hilt. As for what the result would be, everything would be revealed the moment he pulled it out. Then, there was a ripping sound, following Old K's unsheathing of the golden great sword. A red light erupted from the blade like a volcanic eruption. It's the red sword chi. Seeing this scene, the remaining sword spirits in the field divided the last of their strength to fuse with the sword chi and build a defensive array together. However, the explosion of this red suicidal sword chi was too fast and violent. There was a rumble. A huge mushroom cloud rose from the ground. The 5 sword spirits on Old K's side were instantly sent flying backwards like scarecrows in the field. Heat waves assailed the nostrils. In the judges' seats, 9 Nether, Yu Ling, Mou, and Little Qian had gathered their strength to build an impenetrable barrier, protecting all the sword spirits in the spectator stands. What's the result? Yu Ling was curious. She couldn't wait to see through the thick smoke on the field. Then she saw. The 7 people on Lotus Sun's side were unharmed. With Old Barbarian's protection and Mysterious C's blue sword chi, they were firmly protected. Even if the sword spirits were injured, they would be healed by Mysterious C's gentle sword chi. On the other hand, Old K's side seemed to be in a more tragic situation. Apart from Old K, the other members of the Giant Sword faction were all seriously injured. At this time, Old K stood up and looked at Lotus Sunday. Now, according to the agreement, I forfeit this match. In the judges' seats, facing Old K, Mou frowned slightly. He's really forfeiting? He's such a good gambler? Not necessarily. Nine Nether smiled meaningfully. That's what he's calculated. Calculated it. He calculated it. He must have drawn the red suicidal sword chi, Nine Nether said. The evidence is that while almost all the members of the Giant Sword faction on Old K's side were seriously injured, Old K himself was unscathed. This shows that he had already made preparations to prevent self-destruction. In addition, Yuling continued Nine Nether's words, saying, in addition, all the casinos in the Sword King world are run by Old K. So in this year's King group of bets, the biggest winner is probably Old K himself. You mean? Mou was frightened by Old K's scheming, her beautiful face turning pale. I mean that before the start of the competition, Old K might have bet all his money on Miss Sun, Yuling said. Chapter 1429. The unprecedentedly grand sword Dao meet finally came to an end with Lotus Sun's victory. For the four judges, Nine Nether, Yuling, Mou, and Little Qian, this result was no surprise, because it had been predetermined. But for the sword spirits watching the competition, this result was clearly a little surprising. And most importantly, at the end of the competition, Old K's sword gambling skill actually added extra authenticity to the King's group competition. Because gambling itself had its own uncertainties. If Old K really drew a blue or golden sword aura, he might be able to turn the tables around. Before the King's group competition ended, Cool Breeze glared fiercely at Lotus Sun, the anger surging out of his eyes as if he had an irreconcilable hatred for her. Humph. I'm only forfeiting because I'm severely injured and need treatment. It's not because I have a good impression of you that I'm intentionally going easy on you. So where else does it hurt? Lotus Sun laughed. Back in the arena, Cool Breeze's injuries had already been mostly healed by Mysterious Sea's sword chi, so they weren't actually very serious. Screw you. Red-faced, Cool Breeze rolled his eyes and left in a hurry. She was ranked 16th on the sword list, so she also wanted face. Until this moment, no one would have thought that a chaotic situation was about to unfold. Lotus Sun watched as Cool Breeze left through the passage. This female sword spirit was unforgettable to her. Although her mouth said no, her body was very honest. This was Lotus Sun's evaluation of Cool Breeze. Her extremely tsundere personality also made Lotus Sun feel very cute. She watched Cool Breeze walk all the way to the entrance of the passage, watching his figure gradually disappear into the passage. At this moment, there was a sudden shocking tremor on the ground. Is this an earthquake? Lotus Sun frowned. She sensed that something was wrong. It was an oppressive force from above. Caught off guard, Lotus Sun raised her head and suddenly felt as if an incomparably evil force was seeping in from the endless and deep universe. This force was like a knife, mercilessly cutting open the sword storm of the King's group, and then falling densely from the sky. Countless sword spirits were shocked by this sudden and overwhelming force. Bang! The defensive sword barrier formed by Nine Nether and the others was easily shattered like glass under this overwhelming pressure. What exactly is going on? Yuling frowned deeply. This pressure was too shocking. Even with her battle prowess as one of the top 3 on the sword rankings, it was still a little unbearable. She felt as if her throat was being choked by something, and even breathing became extremely difficult. What is this? Mou was shocked by this pressure. The jade crown on her head changed color according to her emotions, turning into a frightened purple. The faces of Nine Nether and Little Qian had also changed. This sudden and inexplicable force caused them to be at a loss for what to do. The entire Old Sword City and the Sword King World sword spirits started to panic. An invisible creature fell from the sky like rain. It was impossible to tell what it was, but under the illumination of the light, its body turned into a rainbow color. Their bodies were transparent, like colored glass. After landing on the ground, They began to squirm rhythmically. What is that? It looks like a worm. Where did this bug come from? Nine Nether and the others discussed it. Their first reaction after splitting off their sword chi was to kill these bugs. However, when their sword chi swept across these colorful insects, these sword chi were all absorbed by these insects. Then they started to grow from the size of a grain of rice to the size of a child. Wang Ling watched this scene from the inn. His heart was as calm as an ancient well. The people from the infinite galaxy had finally made their move. What the hell is this? This inexplicably dangerous aura made Loopy Toad uncomfortable all over. Its fur stood on end as it swiftly came to Wang Ling's side from Lotus Sun's room. There's no mistake. This is a strange creature born from chaos, from the infinite galaxy, said Wang Ying. This kind of creature from chaos had never been seen in the Milky Way. This was a type of seven-colored bug. When it was young, it was only the size of a grain of rice, and in its first stage, it was the size of a child. From this stage onward, it had the ability to hug faces, which would completely drain the spirit power in the body of the target it was hugging. They fed on energy and could devour spirit energy. As long as it contained spirit energy, it would be like a school of man-eating fish in a tropical river that swarmed at the sight of meat. It would be devoured clean in an instant. It seems that the other party's goal isn't just Lung Ming and Miss Sun. They even want to destroy Sword King World. Wang Ying frowned slightly. This was already an enemy that Lotus Sun couldn't deal with. Now they had to change hands. Fortunately, Wang Ling had already made arrangements. In the sword battle arena, when these chaos face-hugging bugs absorbed sword chi from the size of a grain of rice and evolved into adult bugs, a snow-white figure also arrived shortly after. Get lost! A youngster in a snow-white fur coat arrived and withstood all the pressure on his own. Brown sword chi swept the scene. Although these face-hugging bugs could devour spirit power, their stomachs were limited before they had fully matured, and they exploded on the ground one after another. Like crushed eyeballs, rainbow goo flowed all over the ground. It's Lord Jingbai. Lord Jinka and Lord Baiqiao have fused. A sword spirit cried out excitedly. They rarely even saw Jinka. But now they saw Jingbai. He felt as if he was dreaming. Your Excellency. The pressure dissipated, and Nine Nether and the others stepped forward and bowed. On my command, all sword spirits in the top 10,000 on the sword list, move out. Eliminate the enemy. There's no need to hold back. Attack with all your might. They won't be able to devour so much energy when they reach the first stage. The rest of you withdraw your sword chi. Don't let them become nutrients for these face-hugging bugs. Jingbai ordered. Yes, Your Excellency. Nine Nether obeyed. They had to unite the Sword King world, and the key to fighting back was that these bugs absolutely couldn't be allowed to develop into adults. The first and second stages of larvae could be dealt with, but if they developed into the third stage, it would be very difficult. When Lotus Sun opened her eyes again, she found herself in a brand new place. A school at night? The girl looked at the scene in front of her in astonishment, and was stunned to realize that this seemed to be the number 60 high she was familiar with. She released Mysterious C's sword chi, and in the end realized that the world she was in was so vast that she couldn't see the end at all. This was a world shrouded in darkness. At that moment, Wang Ying's figure appeared. The defensive seed I planted on Ying earlier worked. If there's any danger, you'll be sent here together. So this is... You still don't know where you are? Wang Ying laughed. What a silly girl. It looks like a place similar to the core world. Lotus Sun said. Not similar. This is the core world. Wang Ying nodded and looked at Lotus Sunday. You're now in Lord Ling's own core world, Lotus Sun. This is classmate Wang Ling's core world. At that moment, she looked at the girl's astonished little face in front of her. Wang Ying instantly felt a little emotional. Unknowingly, you've already become his world. And now, he only had to wait for the day that the sealed twilight was broken through by the light. Chapter 1430. Chaos facehuggers were hard to deal with, but in the end, they were just minions sent by the other side. This was the other side's most basic test. They had yet to use their real trump card. As Wang Ling and the monk had expected, While Sword King World had been attacked, Earth had also been attacked by chaos facehuggers from the infinite Milky Way. Those incorporeal eggs looked colorful when the light passed through them. They were falling densely along the Earth's latitude and longitude lines, as well as various coordinates, like heavy snowflakes. The monk strolled out of the main hall of Battlesect's True Venerate and looked up at the sky. These facehuggers were a huge problem for the sword spirits of Sword King World. Earth hadn't been upgraded for long, and it would take some time for cultivators all over the world to improve their quality. It would be hard to resist such a large-scale attack in a short period of time. Senior, as expected, the satellites all over the world have been disrupted. Huaxiu Alliance is still asking us what on earth happened. His Excellency the head of state is furious, said grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. It's normal to have this kind of reaction in the face of unknown fear. The monk nodded and said, given the current quality of Earth's cultivators, it's normal that they can't sense these things born in the chaos. In fact, the monk was already prepared. Since Wang Ling had given him Earth, he would defend it even if he had to sacrifice his life. As early as last night, the monk had already cast a Buddhist net over the entire Earth. Although it couldn't completely filter out the facehuggers, it could block more than 90% of them. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal frowned. I still don't understand. What on earth is their purpose in attacking Earth? It must be for Miss Rong and that little sword spirit Lung Ming. Lung Ming is of great use to them, and Miss Rong's mysterious sea has already fused with 4 old Rubik's Cubes. As for attacking Earth, I'm afraid it's just something they did in passing. Something in passing? Senior Immortal, haven't you noticed? At that moment, the monk turned his head to look at grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Dao Ancestor Wang set up 9 Rubik's Cubes back then, and the 9th one is on Earth. But Ling Jinren has already replaced the 9th Rubik's Cube. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was alarmed when he heard this. When I upgraded Mysterious Sea for Miss Rong for the first time, said the monk. Then with Miss Rong's Mysterious Sea, it's actually with 5 Rubik's Cubes? That's right. However, we're worried that Miss Rong won't be able to control her power very well, so we haven't activated the Rubik's Cube yet. Tyrant smiled. So, I'm afraid he won't be able to retrieve the old Rubik's Cube. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Since the other party could think of snatching the 9th cube along the way, doesn't that mean that apart from the 5 old Rubik's Cubes in Miss Lotus Sun's hands, they have already collected the remaining 4? It's like this. So you're saying that everything was planned? Let them help us collect it. Miss Rong can also relax a little. The monk nodded. After all, the journey of collecting the old Rubik's Cube is very risky. The immortal star that Miss Rong went to seems very friendly, but in fact, it is full of danger. Ling Jinren and Lording had arranged everything in advance. An angry unaging star is indeed terrifying. How do we do that? Pay. But your brother has always been poor. Where did he get so much money? Just one sentence. For example, if they don't listen, I'll kill them all. Ah. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was stunned. This was definitely a naked threat. At that moment, the monk looked up. Through the writing on the wall, he could see that the Buddhist net that had been set up last night had already begun to be triggered. There were still 10% of the chaos facehuggers left on Earth, and they had to be cleaned up manually. For this reason, the monk had found the core members of Battle Sect last night, and cast a temporary illumination spell on everyone's Naiwan palaces. The Naiwan palaces were spiritual hubs, and under the effect of the illumination spell, they could greatly enhance their spiritual perception for a short period of time, and expand everyone's spiritual senses. This was all to make it easier for everyone in Battle Sect to find the facehuggers that had been left on Earth. Sect leader, I'll have to trouble you to act according to my orders. Alright. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal bowed. After watching grenade-throwing Senior Immortal leave to assign tasks, the monk tiptoed off the ground and turned into a streak of light that shot through Earth's atmosphere like a rocket into outer space. The other party was determined to get the 9th old Rubik's Cube. But the truth was that this Rubik's Cube on Earth had already been replaced. So why did the monk still work so hard to protect Earth? The reason was very simple. Because if he didn't work hard, the other party probably wouldn't take the bait so easily. The more he tried to protect it, the more he could give the false impression that this thing was very important to them. This was all to trick the other party into going all out and bringing this new Rubik's Cube back. The new Rubik's Cube was a trap. If the other party brought it back, they might not even need to steal the tower, and could directly blow up the crystal base on the other side. So far, everything had gone smoothly. But the monk didn't let down his guard because of this. After all, the other party came from the infinite Milky Way, and this was the first time in his life that he had ever seen a chaos facehugger of this scale. Since the other party had been able to collect so many eggs to launch an attack, it was likely that they had been preparing for this for many years. Once they chose to make a move, they were bound to be extremely confident in their actions. "Sir, please come out. This humble monk is right here." Not far from Earth, the monk, dressed in a purple and gold kasaya, was gazing somewhere. Very quickly, a figure surrounded by starlight appeared. Surrounded by starlight, the young man's figure gradually solidified into a solid form. "Monk, we haven't seen each other for so many years, but you're still so simple." The young man surrounded by starlight greeted the monk as if he knew him. The young man was tall and handsome, and his fair skin was exceptionally eye-catching under the starlight. Peng Shiren. The monk was once a lifelong enemy, but he had died a long time ago. But this time, the monk had a premonition that this person might still be alive. Everything was exactly as he had expected. The monk's expression was indifferent as he stared at the other party. "That fortune teller was you, right?" "I don't know what you're talking about." Peng Shiren smiled, not wanting to admit it. "You've always been proud and aloof, but you've actually become someone else's chess piece. If the Tao ancestor knew about this, he would definitely be very disappointed." The monk lowered his eyelids and sighed. "It's just that we each take what we need." Peng Shiren put his hands behind his back and corrected him. "I'm not a chess piece. I'm just that person's opponent. Everything is built on equal conditions. If something really goes wrong in the end, killing him will be as easy as raising my hand." "You're too confident." The monk frowned slightly. "You still don't understand that person. You don't know how much the Tao ancestor had to pay to seal him back then." "Cut the crap, bald donkey. You don't understand me at all." Peng Shiren smiled at the monk in front of him. "Because I'm Tao ancestor Wang's only disciple." Chapter 1431. Tyrant wasn't surprised that Peng Shiren was still alive. After all, just as he said, he was Tao ancestor Wang's only disciple. Be it in the cultivation world or other places, it seemed that as long as one had a certain level of ability, they all liked to play this fake death game, as if they were afraid that others wouldn't know that they were big shots. Tyrant sighed silently. As for faking his death, he had actually played around with it before. Under normal circumstances, Almighties would fake their death in order to dig out the traitors around them and see the attitudes of the people around them. On the other hand, it was to avoid death tribulations. However, this was not the monk's intention. The monk faked his death back then just to be mischievous. He used the experience of one of his lives to experience it, and found out that after faking his death, he would not be able to escape. Those who mourned and commemorated. All sorts of evil spirits would surface after faking their deaths. This process was rather torturous, but the thrill was when he reappeared in front of everyone after his fake death was exposed. In front of him, the young man surrounded by starlight seemed to enjoy the feeling of surprise when others saw him. "So, the purpose of you faking your death is to have more energy to invest in the endless Milky Way and search for the Tao ancestors' heavenly tomb." The monk guessed. "I already know where the heavenly tomb is. There was only one last step left. I will bring the sealed people along with me." Peng Shiren had already formulated the entire plan, as if victory was already in his grasp. "It seems like I can only fight." The monk closed his eyes. "Do you still remember that when you saw me, I was a Tao god? But now it's different." Peng Shiren smiled confidently as if victory was within his grasp. "I know that you've already stepped into the ancestor realm. If you were a Tao god, I wouldn't even bother to look at you." The monk laughed. Now that his strength had returned to its peak, He was even stronger than before. Me too, Peng Shiren said. We haven't seen each other for many years. Bald donkey, you've also become stronger. I wasn't your match in the past, but I want to see if I'm still weaker than you now. There is always a mountain higher than the mountain. There is still a certain distance between you and your master, said the monk. Dao Ancestor Wang's true realm was not just that of a Dao ancestor. He was the first person to enter the ancestor realm. That was why he was called Dao Ancestor Wang. And now, Dao Ancestor Wang was definitely stronger. Even if there is a distance, it won't be too far. I think I've caught up to Master's footsteps. Peng Shiren. Boom. Starlight surged around his body, creating great waves. There was a type of powerful fluctuation surging about. At the same time, the blood energy in his body surged violently. A star dragon made of diamond rushed out from Peng Shiren's body. It struggled unceasingly, and then burst out with a dragon roar. When the star dragon appeared, it directly scattered the surrounding starry sky. The energy fluctuations were too strong. Seeing that things weren't going well, Tyrant brought Peng Shiren and shifted the battlefield to the Milky Way extraterritorial galaxy the moment Peng Shiren summoned Star Dragon. It's useless even if you change the battlefield. I must obtain the Rubik's Cube on Earth. Peng Shiren opened his eyes. Shiha-chun, Chun-I. Tian, I Feng I on I ancestor I Dao I said. Ion. I said I as I can. This is. The monk's gaze was deep as he stared at Peng Shiren, trying to see through him. Peng Shiren's body glowed. Starlight surrounded him, exuding an immortal power. After entering the Dao ancestor realm, Peng Shiren's realm was not the same as before. He was more oppressive than all the family heads in the deity realm combined. Not only have you entered the Dao ancestor realm, but you've also cultivated the Dao ancestor's myriad realm stardust technique to the 8th level. Such a change really surprised the monk because when he first met Peng Shiren, the young man had just started cultivating this technique, and had not even cultivated to the 2nd level. But now, he had already cultivated it to the realm of the great perfection. The 8th level was called the inextinguishable diamond. As long as the power of the starlight was not exhausted, Peng Shiren would have an endless source of energy. Even if he was injured, he could quickly recover under the illumination of the surrounding starlight. Bald donkey, as you can see. I'm the inextinguishable son of the stars, Peng Shiren murmured. His eyes were cold. His body glowed and the star dragon roared. The myriad world stardust technique was the #1 technique of the Dao ancestor. He was invincible on the battlefield of the universe. I'll let you know what it means to be invincible. Kill. Peng Shiren's hair was shimmering with starlight. His eyes were frightening. Without any makeup, he threw a punch at the monk's head. The small fist condensed countless starlight around it. This was Peng Shiren condensing the power of the stars. He had refined all the bones in his body into the supreme star bone. He could absorb the power of the starlight around him to increase the density of his bones and greatly enhance his strength. This punch seemed unremarkable. It was not decorated with any skills, but it was still shocking. It would not be a problem to kill a family head in the deity realm. Boom. Monk Jin Dang held his breath. Facing this punch, he meditated and did not dodge. He took it with his own physical strength. In the end, the punch seemed to hit a hard piece of iron. With a hum, there was a high-frequency sound of metal colliding. The monk knew very well that Peng Shiren did not use his full strength in this punch. He only used about 30% of his strength. Cough. At this time, blood was seeping from the corner of the monk's mouth. Although he seemed to be unharmed, this punch had caused a certain amount of internal injuries. Bald donkey, you're too confident. You blocked it with your own body, and did not leave any defensive means. Are you looking down on me? Peng Shiren said. At the same time, he sighed in his heart. Ordinary opponents wouldn't even be able to withstand 10% of his strength. 30% of his strength was enough to destroy the soul. There were only a few people in this world who could withstand this punch of his. You're injured, bald donkey. Peng Shiren could not help but laugh. The monk's confidence had hurt him. However, just as he was feeling pleased with himself, He saw 3 dazzling Buddha flames suddenly bloom on the top of the monk's head. Peng Shiren's expression changed instantly. The 3 holy flames of Buddhism. You've actually comprehended them. He could tell at a glance that these 3 flames were the Buddha flames of the past, the Buddha flames of the present, and the Buddha flames of the future. Peng Shiren knew many people. However, it was rare to see someone who could comprehend 3 Buddha flames at the same time. As expected of his lifelong enemy, Peng Shiren's expression became excited. Now his master had entered reincarnation, and could not care about him for the time being. As long as he killed the monk in front of him. In this universe, no one could restrain him anymore. After all, in this universe, which was surrounded by stars, his 8th level inextinguishable diamond was invincible. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.